Betrayed by her colleagues, she is aggressively introduced to the pavement by a truck. But instead of dying, she snaps awake as a doomed queen fated for assassination. Now, she must use cutthroat corporate survival skills to cancel her own murder. An evening shadow falls as our girl finds herself face-to-face with a hooded assassin. She questions his motives, but instead of offering a villainous monologue, he responds by plunging a knife directly into her stomach. He casually drops the weapon on the ground like it is a piece of trash, leaving her freezing in shock. As her life flashes before her eyes, she realizes this is the ultimate betrayal. The scene transitions into the lore of a story known as Palace of Glory and Betrayal. This tale follows a government official turned famous detective trying to solve a massive palace mystery. At the center of it all is the villainous Queen Lavinia. She started off capable and beloved by her people, but somewhere along the way, she shifted into a tyrant imposing brutal politics. The body count rose, public satisfaction plummeted, and eventually, she was assassinated by someone deep in her inner circle. The juicy part is that the novel never actually revealed the culprit. Drawing parallels, our girl reflects on how her own life mirrors the doomed queen. She had built a company from the ground up with her colleagues, riding high on early success. But tragedy struck when she completely failed to notice a fake contract right under her nose. Her most trusted subordinate staged a corporate takeover, gleefully bragging about teaming up to steal her hard work. Boiling with frustration, she questions where it all went wrong and wonders if understanding her team better could have prevented this backstabbing disaster. Before she can fully process her corporate trauma, a massive truck comes hurtling out of nowhere and aggressively introduces her to the pavement. Suddenly, she snaps awake, realizing her soul has been abruptly relocated into the body of the infamous queen. She barely has a second to process her new royal status before finding herself cornered by two imposing men. They accuse her of corrupting the nation and proudly announce her impending doom. She frantically tries to figure out what in the world is happening as one of the attackers winds up for a lethal strike. She braces for an impact that never comes. Right on cue, a handsome subordinate bursts onto the scene, offering a smooth apology for his tardiness while checking if she is unharmed. The remaining attacker recognizes the newcomer as the Black Knight Duke Paul Dean, but before he can even finish his sentence, the Duke swiftly sends him to the afterlife with a single brutal strike. Our girl stares at the fresh carnage, severely questioning reality. The Duke approaches smoothly, drops to one knee, and formally apologizes for arriving late to her crisis. She is too stunned to speak. The Duke zeroes in on a tiny cut on her arm, instantly escalating the situation to a medical emergency. Declaring that he must summon a physician immediately, he scoops her effortlessly into his arms. While being cradled like a priceless artifact, our girl connects the dots. She remembers this specific assassination attempt from the novel, confirming she has indeed been transmigrated into the Villainess. Panic sets in as she realizes she might be destined to die a second time. According to the original plot, the queen is scheduled to be murdered by a trusted confidant the night before she announces her royal consort. Unaware of her internal crisis, the Duke stares at her with absolute devotion and solemnly vows to protect her from death. She instantly dismisses his heroic pledge as a total lie, convinced the plot armor is severely against her. Just as they prepare to make their dramatic exit, a commotion breaks out. A fiery red-haired man is pinned to the ground by two guards, screaming at the top of his lungs about delivering divine punishment to the wicked queen. Our girl stares down the mastermind behind her assassination attempt. It turns out to be the Marquis, who loudly demands the Duke hand over the vixen, declaring that she is a toxic presence bringing only harm to the nation. The Duke glares right back, dropping the dramatic bombshell that the Marquis is actually his brother-in-law. Showing absolutely zero family loyalty, the Duke furiously brands him a traitor for pointing a blade at Her Majesty and orders the guards to throw him in prison until his trial. The guards happily comply, dragging him away while he angrily yells that the Duke will severely regret this. Completely unfazed by his relative's dramatic exit, the Duke smoothly turns to our girl and suggests they leave. Meanwhile, our girl is internally screaming, severely questioning what fresh disaster is going to hit her next. A few days later, the Marquis is put on trial for his treasonous life choices. Our girl manages to calm her racing heart, mentally channeling the endless, mind-numbing civil trials she sat through back in her past life as a company president. She knows she just needs to survive this courtroom drama. The head judge kicks things off, sternly asking if the Marquis admits to ordering the hit on the Queen. The Marquis proudly owns up to it, boldly declaring that the Western Territory is starving and drowning in taxes. Since the Queen completely abandoned them, he decided to personally deliver a very sharp, pointy brand of justice. Listening to his heroic speech, our girl pieces together his character from the novel. She remembers the Marquis was a man so overflowing with justice that it became an actual hazard. He had begged the original Lavinia for help, got completely ghosted, and decided murder was the only logical next step. In the original plot, Lavinia ruthlessly executed him and his entire clan without batting an eye. This total massacre included his wife, who just so happened to be the Duke's sister. Naturally, having your entire family slaughtered by your boss kind of kills the workplace morale, which caused the Duke to harbor a massive grudge and ultimately made him the prime suspect for Lavinia's future murder. Back in reality, the Marquis is still running his mouth, proudly stating that a queen who abandons her people is pure evil. The courtroom peanut gallery instantly starts gossiping, completely agreeing that the queen is useless, neglects the West, and proves that a female monarch is a terrible idea. Hearing the entire room openly roast her, our girl realizes she literally has zero allies. The novel dictated that she would die a miserable, lonely death, but she absolutely refuses to let her subscription to Life get cancelled like that. Cutting through the chatter, the judge sentences the Marquis to death and asks the Duke, acting as defense counsel, if he has any objections. The Duke violently clenches his fist. Fighting a massive internal battle, he decides his duty as the royal guardian overrides his family tree and firmly states he has no objections to his brother-in-law getting permanently deleted. Realizing that letting the Marquis die will instantly lock her back into the villainous route, our girl loudly objects to the sentence. Sparing his life, she uses her absolute authority to completely rewrite his fate. She appoints him as the reconstruction officer of the Western Territory, drops a massive 5-year tax exemption on the famine-struck areas, and casually orders him to fix the entire region. The Marquis looks at her like she just grew a second head, but quickly scrambles to agree, promising he will make it happen. Extremely satisfied with her quick thinking, our girl declares the case closed, prompting the judge to officially adjourn the court. As the room empties out, the crowd and the Duke are left standing there, staring in utter shock at the fact that the wicked queen just solved a national crisis with basic empathy. Later, our girl collapses in her room, completely drained of her will to live. She decides being a monarch is infinitely more exhausting than surviving back-to-back corporate meetings, but finds comfort in knowing she is successfully changing her doomed ending. Her brief moment of peace is interrupted when the Duke enters the room. He bows deeply, completely overflowing with gratitude, and thanks her for saving his brother-in-law's life. He vows to remember this massive favor for the rest of his life. Our girl quickly deflects, acting like it was no big deal, while internally sweating over the fact that she literally only did it to save her own neck. The Duke romantically adds that her judgment did not just save his family, but it also saved his heart. Just as she is starting to relax, our girl's eyes lock onto a very familiar, very sharp dagger. Her panic instantly reboots as she remembers a terrifying detail from the novel. The weapon used to eventually murder Lavinia was a dagger left at the crime scene, which was a specific dagger that Lavinia had gifted to the Duke to celebrate his promotion. Staring at the potential murder weapon, she realizes her fiercely loyal knight might still be her future assassin. Acting on pure survival instinct, she bluntly informs the Duke that she is considering firing him from his royal guard duties. He looks completely derailed by the sudden HR violation and frantically asks why. She straight up tells him there is a solid chance he might betray her just like the Marquis did. Desperate to prove his loyalty, the Duke grabs her hand, passionately vows that he will never betray her, and seals the dramatic promise with a deeply intense kiss to her hand. The Duke doubles down, practically begging to stay by her side. Our girl stares at him, mentally calculating if his intense puppy dog eyes are currently masking deep-seated murderous intent. Knowing she has to unmask her future killer to avoid a second funeral, she flashes him a perfectly diplomatic smile and orders him to prep her return to the bureaucratic nightmare of government work starting tomorrow. He obediently bows and takes his leave, leaving her to silently vow that she will figure out if he is her ultimate savior or her walking doom. Fast forward, and our girl is buried under a massive mountain of paperwork at her desk, realizing that ruling a kingdom is basically just extreme office administration. The Duke interrupts her misery to gently ask if she remembers what day it is. Drawing a complete blank, she asks what she missed, only for him to politely remind her that tonight is literally her own birthday ball. The scene shifts to the grand ballroom, which is completely packed with high society nobles who immediately start aggressively whispering the second she enters with the Duke. They mutter about how terrifyingly beautiful she is, acting like making eye contact with her will instantly send them to the afterlife. Our girl takes this in stride, fully aware that being the star of her own villainous birthday party comes with a healthy dose of public terror. The Duke smoothly tells her to ignore the haters, romantically comparing her to the sun and noting that everyone rightfully fears its power. She mentally points out that her son is canonically fated to set in a pool of blood, but verbally assures him she is completely unbothered. Going full guard dog, the Duke glares menacingly at the crowd and loudly declares he will absolutely not forgive anyone who hurts her. Our girl notes that his overprotective switch has been permanently flipped on since the trial, which is great for survival, but heavily overwhelming for her personal space. Retreating to a quiet corner to sip some wine, she mentally reviews her 5-star lineup of potential murderers. Suspect number 1 is Chancellor David Dior, a political mastermind who excels at manipulation and finds her extremely annoying to deal with. Suspect 2 is the court jester, a former foreign assassin turned personal intelligence agent, who is basically a walking wild card that could betray her at any given second. Suspect 3 is the Tribal King, a violently ambitious man who united the tribes and spends his free time fantasizing about slitting her throat. Suspect 4 is her actual younger brother Noah, a massive playboy whom Lavinia aggressively stripped of all royal privileges so he could never touch the throne. And rounding out the list is her very own Black Knight, the Duke, whose canonical motive was his family getting slaughtered. She remembers a frustrated interview where the original author casually dropped that all 5 men had solid motives, but none were the absolute deciding factor. This means there is a massive hidden puzzle piece she still needs to find to dodge her death flag, and she severely wonders which problem child she should investigate first. Right on cue, the Chancellor slides into her personal space, wearing a flawlessly polite smile as he offers his heartfelt birthday wishes. He smoothly pivots to mentioning the recent assassination attempt, claiming he was incredibly worried about her. Our girl internally rolls her eyes into another dimension, highly doubting the snake actually cared. Before she can verbally spar with him, a butler suddenly snaps, pulls out a knife, and launches himself at her while screaming for her to die. Without missing a beat, the Duke intercepts the attacker with a brutal kick to the stomach. He pins the guy to the floor and casually draws his own blade to instantly cancel the butler's subscription to life. Our girl shrieks for him to stop, halting the execution with mere milliseconds to spare before the guards rush in to drag the would-be assassin away. The Duke instantly checks if she is unharmed. She confirms she is fine thanks to his reflexes, but her internal alarm bells are absolutely deafening over his complete lack of hesitation to commit casual murder. Deciding to test his unhinged loyalty, she asks if he would truly obey any command she gives, even if she ordered him to die. Without blinking, he stares directly into her soul and promises he would gladly offer up his life if she asked, simply because he believes her word is absolute law. She smiles slightly, acutely aware that any normal woman would sprint away from this giant walking red flag, but she genuinely wonders how far she can push his devotion. Her thoughts are interrupted when she spots a tiny scratch on the back of his hand from the scuffle. The Duke tries to brush it off as nothing, but she immediately scolds him, insisting he needs to get it treated properly. The Duke looks completely blue-screened by the fact that she actually cares about his well-being. Meanwhile, the Chancellor watches this entire oddly domestic exchange with an incredibly entertained smirk. He steps back into the conversation, casually asking if she has considered their previous discussion. Our girl plays entirely dumb, asking what on earth he is talking about. The Chancellor chuckles, noting that playing innocent is quite cruel when they are supposed to be discussing their impending marriage. The Chancellor officially drops the marriage bomb, leaving our girl internally rebooting from the sheer audacity. Beside her, the Duke practically burns a hole into the Chancellor's skull with a completely lethal side-eye, while the ballroom crowd instantly launches into an aggressive whispering campaign. Sensing the room is entirely too loud for an impromptu wedding planning session, the Chancellor smoothly suggests they reschedule their chat. Our girl's internal warning sirens are blaring at maximum volume, completely terrified of whatever verbal contract the original queen might have accidentally agreed to. She mentally locks down her defenses, slaps on a painfully fake smile, and acts like she is looking forward to it, fully aware that surviving this palace means trusting absolutely nobody. Fast forward to a private garden tea party, where the Chancellor treats his marriage pitch exactly like a corporate merger. He breaks down the logistics, explaining that she is the glittering symbol of high society, and he is the political heavyweight who runs the nation. Joining forces would simply be a massive win-win for both of their careers. Our girl sips her tea, forced to admit that his business logic is incredibly solid. However, the novel's tragic lore suddenly floods her brain. The original Lavinia actually fell for this exact pitch, deeply trusting his shiny promise of lifelong protection. But the second the rings were on, the Chancellor went completely rogue. He started aggressively passing laws behind her back, loudly claiming to everyone that he had her royal seal of approval. When the original queen confronted him for treating her like a glorified rubber stamp, he basically told her to sit down, hand over her authority, and let him run the country. Realizing she was nothing but a political stepping stone, Lavinia furiously forced a divorce. The split completely tanked the Chancellor's standing in the political world, leaving him drowning in a massive pool of hatred for his former wife. Back in the present, the Chancellor stands up and leans in entirely too close, invading her personal space to promise that if he becomes her consort, he will personally crush any political complaints against her. Knowing exactly how this scam ends, our girl decides to completely derail his ambitions, hoping to shake loose some clues about her future murder. Flashing a dangerously polite smile, she casually drops a nuke on his ego, sweetly informing him that he is simply not enough of a man to be her husband. The Chancellor looks like his brain just hit a severe system error. He scrambles to ask exactly how he is lacking. Reaching out to tap him under the chin like a disappointed teacher, she explains that her husband needs to be the absolute pinnacle of capability and trust, and currently, he does not even make the podium. The Chancellor jerks back, bitterly listing off her other heavily armed options like the Duke or the Tribal King, before desperately asking what he needs to do to win her undivided attention. Pivoting seamlessly into interrogation mode, Our girl casually brings up the recent assassination attempt at her party, specifically noting how incredibly unfazed he seemed during the chaos. Playing the innocent card, he credits his calm demeanor to his past military service. Our girl mentally files that terrifying fun fact away. If he has military stealth training, he is more than capable of sneaking into her bedroom and introducing her to a fatal dagger. Trying to salvage his romantic momentum, he grabs her hand, swears to personally hunt down any clues about the culprit, and dramatically kisses her knuckles before strutting away. Left alone, our girl physically shudders, hoping the original queen's ghost is enjoying that brutal rejection, while severely questioning if anyone in this entire kingdom is actually sane. Meanwhile, the chancellor retreats to his office, heavily annoyed that his flawless proposal got thrown out the window. When his lackey asks for the next play, the chancellor declares he will manipulate the citizens who love the queen to systematically corner her into marriage. The lackey cautiously asks what happens if she still refuses. Flashing a smile that looks like it was constructed purely from bad intentions, the chancellor drops his polite facade and vows to take her by force. Oblivious to her newly upgraded stalker, our girl heads outside and spots the duke standing guard like a very handsome, completely frozen statue. She asks if he has been waiting there this entire time, and he seriously confirms he was just securing the perimeter for her safety. Reaching out, she touches his freezing face, absolutely shocked to realize he has been standing out there since the afternoon. He stares intensely into her eyes, completely dismissing the freezing temperatures as irrelevant. She severely wonders why he is going to such extreme lengths just because she saved his in-laws. Even though he might theoretically be the one to end her life later with his shiny dagger, she decides to blindly trust his unhinged loyalty for now. Flashing him a warm smile, she tells him to follow her, noting she has a very specific favor to ask. Our girl leads the duke to a small table, sitting down for a private chat. She leans in and seriously asks him to investigate the chancellor's background, dropping the heavy manipulation tactic that he is literally the only person she can trust with this task. The duke looks momentarily stunned that she would entrust him with something so huge, but he immediately snaps into action. He passionately vows to take full responsibility, promising to ruthlessly tear through the chancellor's entire life, from his official paperwork down to his most private secrets, searching for anything remotely suspicious. Our girl is a little taken aback by his intense dedication, but sincerely thanks him. As he flashes a bright, happy smile, she mentally notes that he is like a completely different person when he is not actively trying to end someone's life. The scene shifts back to the royal office, where one of the palace employees finishes giving a report. Our girl sincerely thanks him, stating that his explanation made things very clear. The entire room of employees looks completely shocked that the famously wicked queen actually expressed basic gratitude. Our girl internally reflects on the novel's lore, recalling that the original Lavinia let paranoia consume her. After being betrayed once, she treated literally everyone like a hostile enemy. Our girl realizes that while there are definitely people out to get her, the regular palace staff genuinely do good work. As she takes the paperwork, she formally tells them she is relying on all of them. Her mental priority list is clear. Step 1 is to surround herself with capable people she can actually trust. Then her eyes land on the chancellor, who is casually lounging in the office. She glares at him, deeply questioning why he is even breathing the same air as her. He spots her unhappy expression and smoothly asks if she is upset that he is there. She dryly asks why she would be, and he points out that her annoyance is loudly written all over her face. She looks away, choosing not to grace that with a response. The chancellor then smoothly justifies his presence, noting that since she was recently injured, it is only natural for him, as the chancellor, to physically support her. Our girl begrudgingly admits that makes sense. The employees start whispering in awe as they watch the two of them work. Despite their obvious tension, they are both blasting through paperwork at terrifying speeds. Even our girl has to mentally admit that having the chancellor around makes the workflow significantly smoother. Seizing the opportunity to flex his competence, the chancellor leans in entirely too close and arrogantly tells her he needs her to recognize that he is more capable than anyone else, heavily implying he wants her to recognize his worth as her future husband. Our girl simply looks away and tells him to do whatever he wants. Suddenly remembering a previous gift, she asks him about a massive bouquet of flowers he had sent. He plays it off as a small token, but then smoothly offers to prepare an even more extravagant gift next time. He also casually mentions he could lend her some of his excellent personnel to help with the workload. Our girl expertly dodges the trap, coolly stating she will just accept the sentiment and nothing more. She mentally calculates that accepting his subordinates would basically mean inviting a bunch of highly trained spies into her office, and she absolutely cannot afford to owe a massive favor to her potential murderer. Taking the hint, the chancellor formally excuses himself and leaves. As soon as the door clicks shut, the atmosphere in the room instantly lifts, and the employees happily get back to working alongside our girl. Meanwhile, the chancellor is internally throwing a tiny tantrum. He thinks to himself that since he went out of his way to make time for her, the absolute least she could do is act a little happier to see him. As he walks down the hall, he spots the duke standing guard outside. The Chancellor smirks and mockingly thanks the Duke for waiting for him. The Duke flatly responds that he was absolutely not doing that. The Chancellor ignores him, smoothly noting that the Duke is as quiet and unreadable as ever, which is exactly why Her Majesty likes him so much. He also points out that the Duke seems to be in a weirdly good mood today. The Duke just smirks to himself, internally agreeing that he is actually feeling pretty great. The Chancellor sarcastically thanks him for the little chat and walks away, leaving the Duke standing there in silence. Back in the office, the Duke enters the room to find our girl happily munching on snacks. She looks up, mildly embarrassed, and quickly explains she is using the Pomodoro technique, claiming that taking proper snack breaks severely boosts efficiency. She offers him a biscuit, and the Duke accepts it, looking deeply honored by the baked good. Later, our girl casually asks one of her employees why the Chancellor is constantly lingering around her office like a lost, heavily armed puppy. The employee looks at her like it is incredibly obvious, explaining that the Chancellor desperately wants the position of royal consort. He notes that the entire political world is basically shaking with anticipation over who will win the royal lottery and produce an heir. Everyone is violently curious about who will secure the seat next to Her Majesty. Our girl asks if the consort position is really that big of a deal, and the employee basically confirms it is the most highly contested prize in the kingdom. Our girl mentally processes this, realizing the situation is basically a high-stakes, reverse harem with a massive side of impending death. In the original story, after divorcing the Chancellor, Lavinia tried to take a new consort, but she was brutally murdered the night before the official announcement. This means the consort announcement is the literal deadline for her life. For now, everything feels surprisingly peaceful, and she sincerely wishes it could just stay this way. Unfortunately, the universe hates her. The scene shifts to a dark, shadowy room where an unknown figure violently smashes the glass case of a jewel. The figure aggressively clenches the stolen gem in their fist, furiously declaring they will not forgive the queen and vowing to get absolute revenge. Our girl stands in the middle of the treasure vault, confirming with the Duke that this is exactly where the heavily guarded national artifact was stolen. The Duke explains that the vault only hosts exhibitions twice a year during spring and autumn. Since it is currently closed off to the public with strictly limited access, this was definitely an inside job. He hands her a dramatic little piece of paper left at the crime scene. The note smugly thanks them for their sloppy security, brags about stealing the Tears of Dawn, and aggressively calls the queen trash who ignores her rotting kingdom and has absolutely no right to sit on the throne. Our girl stares at the insulting paper, utterly baffled that someone stole a priceless artifact just to be a dedicated hater. She mentally flips through the novel's plot, recalling that the original queen threw a massive tantrum over this exact incident and blindly interrogated half the palace. Wondering if the security actually was a complete joke, she asks the Duke. He fiercely defends the vault's honor, explaining that it is under intense lockdown and only highly specialized officials are allowed inside. He notes they already have 3 prime suspects and actual physical evidence, making it a perfectly contained mystery. The Duke casually adds that a crime like this would be impossible for anyone involved in management, with the sole exception of the single most dangerous person in the entire palace. Right on cue, the Chancellor strolls into the room, smoothly agreeing with the investigation team's report and offering a polite greeting. Our girl asks who this mysteriously dangerous person is, and the Chancellor smirks, noting it is the person she knows best. Before she can process that puzzle, a loud commotion breaks out. A blonde man bursts onto the scene, loudly arguing with the guards that he just wants to take a quick look around. A guard tries to grab him, but the blonde man suddenly glares, acting incredibly high and mighty as he warns the guard that carelessly touching him is a fantastic way to invite disaster. He makes a lightning-fast slashing motion. The guard instantly freezes, completely terrified that his throat has just been sliced open. A second later, the blonde man bursts into laughter, revealing he just used a bit of glue for a magic trick. He casually adds that next time, he might actually commit a murder, before cheerfully declaring that Her Majesty is the only one allowed to touch him without permission. Without a single ounce of hesitation, he closes the distance and wraps our girl in a massive hug. Our girl completely short-circuits, her face heating up as she realizes this is the court jester, who secretly doubles as Lavinia's personal intelligence agent. She severely wonders if the original queen was secretly dating her spies. Her romantic panic is abruptly cancelled when the Duke violently grabs the jester by the back of the neck. Radiating absolute murderous intent, the Duke glares at him and orders him to unhand the queen. The jester aggressively gasps for air, dramatically begging our girl for a rescue before the Duke permanently disconnects his head from his spine. Deciding she needs her intelligence agent alive, our girl orders the Duke to drop him. The Duke aggressively sighs and lets go, but 2 guards instantly secure the jester's arms. The Chancellor steps up, pointing out that an elite intelligence agent could easily bypass any vault security. He lists the jester's long history of causing chaotic incidents around the palace just for fun, officially crowning him the prime suspect. The jester wildly protests, insisting that officially he is simply a humble entertainer who does magic tricks and plays music to lighten the mood. He heavily stresses that he is definitely not the culprit this time. The Chancellor and the Duke immediately latch onto the highly suspicious phrasing of his defense and order the guards to throw him in a cell to extract the details. As he is being dragged away, the Jester somehow completely slips out of their grip like a heavily armed eel and instantly wraps our girl in a desperate back hug. He whines about his impending jail time. Our girl just smiles, mentally noting that he is exactly as chaotic as his novel counterpart. She calculates that if this man actually is her future murderer, it just means the original queen totally failed to keep him on a tight leash. The Jester practically cries, begging for her help and firmly insisting he is innocent. Fully leaning into the drama, our girl hugs him right back and loudly declares that she actually believes him, confidently promising to personally clear his name. Following her bold declaration to blindly prove the Jester's innocence, the Duke and the Chancellor look like they just suffered simultaneous brain glitches. Meanwhile, our girl is having a massive internal panic attack. She realizes she just confidently promised to solve a major crime despite having zero actual detective experience and absolutely no idea if her chaotic intelligence agent is even innocent. Faking it until she makes it, she orders them to show her the way so she can officially interrogate the suspects. The interrogation kicks off with suspect number 1, an overseer named Colette. When the Duke demands an alibi, she politely claims she was innocently organizing paperwork in her room. Next up is suspect number 2, another overseer named Annie, who smugly declares she was probably just sleeping. Finally, suspect number 3, the chief supervisor Julian, initially stays completely silent before nervously admitting she had sneaked out into town to grab some drinks. She immediately backpedals, awkwardly looking away and violently insisting it is not a regular habit. Our girl mentally notes that absolutely none of them have a verifiable alibi. She points out to the Duke that any of these 3 women could easily be the thief. Refusing to hit a dead end, she dramatically slams her hands on the table and orders everyone back to the crime scene. Back at the vault, the Duke drops another massive investigative headache. He explains that they found personal items belonging to all 3 suspects scattered right at the scene. They recovered Colette's pen, Annie's earring, and Julian's pocket watch. This means either one of them dropped their item while committing the robbery, or someone purposely planted an entire lost and found bin to frame them. Our girl's brain feels like a Windows update stuck at 99%, realizing there is zero logical way to narrow this down just yet. Later, she is sitting alone at her desk when the Jester magically appears in her personal space. He casually asks if she has figured out the culprit, to which she quietly admits she is still thinking. He cheerfully suggests the case is headed for a total dead end and the treasure is gone forever. Trying to assert some royal authority, our girl puts on her absolute most intimidating glare. She sharply informs him that if the thief remains uncaught, she will systematically punish everyone involved, including him. Instead of being terrified, the Jester flashes a deeply unhinged smile and completely agrees. He leans dangerously close to her face and proposes a terrifyingly simple solution. They should just murder all the suspects right now. He enthusiastically volunteers to go start the bloodbath immediately. He then tilts his head, noting that her current hesitation is highly unusual. Normally, the Queen would be screaming, physically throwing things, and demanding he execute people on the spot. Hearing this, our girl connects the horrifying dots. She realizes the original Lavinia's intense paranoia forced this man to do some absolutely atrocious things. Completely ignoring her internal horror, the Jester eagerly grabs her hand and kisses it. He passionately declares he is practically vibrating with excitement to watch her fly into a terrifying rage and casually asks who they should execute first. Realizing his devotion to the Queen is basically a full-blown mental illness, our girl firmly shuts him down. She reminds him that the thief's note was a direct insult to the Queen herself. She strictly orders him not to lay a single finger on anyone, demanding he just sit quietly and watch her solve the case. The Jester looks genuinely shocked by her composed, non-murderous response. He starts casually flicking a lethal little knife around, purring that he is very much looking forward to the show. With a quick flick of his wrist, he performs a magic trick, transforming the deadly blade into a beautiful rose. He hands it to her, softly noting that this feels exactly like the day they first met, though he assumes she has completely forgotten their promise. Our girl mentally short-circuits, having absolutely no idea what promise he is talking about. Before she can ask, he smoothly steps in, plants a kiss right on her cheek, and formally bows. He dramatically declares that watching her shine on stage is his only reason for living. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind sweeps through the room. Our girl blinks, and the Jester is suddenly standing dangerously on the edge of the balcony. He calls out that he is really looking forward to her performance before casually throwing himself right off the ledge. She rushes over in a total panic to check where on earth he went, but he has completely vanished into thin air. Left entirely alone, our girl seriously questions how the original Queen survived managing this chaotic walking red flag, concluding that absolutely no one could ever truly control a man like that. Deciding she desperately needs to cool her head, she wanders down the corridor. She mentally pieces together the fragmented clues, the smashed glass, the heavily insulting message card, and the highly convenient dropped items. She realizes the culprit is not even trying to hide. In fact, they are going out of their way to directly provoke her. She severely wonders what their actual endgame is. Her intense brainstorming is violently interrupted by loud shouting. She peeks around the corner and spots suspect number 1 and suspect number 2 aggressively screaming that the entire disaster is the other's fault. Our girl overhears suspect number 2 violently slap suspect number 1 across the face, aggressively screaming that she left all the vault work to her, and this entire disaster is entirely her fault for slacking off. Suspect number 1 trembles and stammers out a pathetic apology. Suddenly, suspect number 3 swoops in to play peacekeeper, telling number 2 to calm down because Colette clearly works very hard. But then she drops a heavily loaded warning, telling Colette not to do anything that will sell the rest of them out. Eavesdropping on this entire mess, our girl mentally roasts the Duke. She deeply questions his definition of strict state control and decides the palace management needs a severe overhaul. Realizing this situation feels significantly less like a high-stakes criminal investigation and way more like a toxic corporate internal audit, she instantly figures out exactly who the real culprit is. She swiftly tracks down the Duke and hands him a very specific background check to complete before the final confrontation. The scene shifts back to the interrogation room, where our girl confidently faces the 3 suspects and the highly entertained jester. Suspect number 2 nervously asks if she actually identified the thief. Our girl confirms she has, but smoothly pivots to the actual motive. She points out that if someone just wanted to steal the treasure, they would have done it cleanly. Instead, the thief went out of their way to leave a highly insulting message meant to force the queen to notice the rotting reality at her feet. Locking eyes with her target, our girl officially names Overseer Colette as the mastermind. The other 2 suspects look like their brains just suffered a catastrophic system failure. Colette tries to play innocent, demanding proof and pointing out that based on the vague alibis and the dropped evidence, any of them could be guilty on paper. Our girl completely shuts down her defense. She explains that while anyone could have theoretically swiped the treasure, the real trick was stealing the planted evidence. Suspect number 2 and 3 instantly realize their earring and pocket watch had mysteriously vanished right before the heist. Our girl turns back to Colette, noting she always keeps her specific pen on her person. Stealing all 3 personal items to plant at the scene required some serious dedication. Internally, our girl had already ordered the Duke to investigate exactly who stole the earring and the watch. She already has rock-solid proof, but gently encourages Colette to turn herself in to earn a lighter sentence. Realizing she is completely cornered, Colette drops the innocent act. She bluntly states there is no way she can talk her way out of this, brutally roasting the other 2 suspects by adding that idiots like them could never pull off a national heist anyway. When suspect number 3 stupidly asks why she would do something so foolish, Colette completely snaps, calling them the absolute fools. Our girl steps in to lay out the real tragedy. Colette knew that stealing a national treasure would inevitably trigger a massive, unavoidable royal investigation. That investigation would legally expose how the other 2 suspects spent all their time slacking off, neglecting their vault duties, and ruthlessly bullying Colette by dumping all the work on her. Colette essentially weaponized the Wicked Queen's terrifying reputation, aiming for absolute mutual destruction. She wanted to drag her toxic co-workers down with her, fully willing to be executed as long as her bullies burned too. The Duke formally declares that stealing national treasure is an unforgivable crime and orders the guards to take her away. But our girl steps directly in front of her. Her past life corporate trauma is violently triggered by the blatant power harassment, completely refusing to let a heavily overworked, highly capable employee go down like this. Flashing a brilliant smile, she casually asks Colette if she is interested in a massive career promotion. Colette looks like she just got hit by a truck, entirely too stunned to speak, so our girl cheerfully answers for her, declaring that she absolutely is. The Duke tries to protest this major HR violation, but our girl aggressively pivots to the 2 bullies. She drops her friendly demeanor and vows to personally and ruthlessly crack down on their slacking and workplace harassment, advising them to thoroughly prepare for their incoming nightmare. The 2 bullies instantly collapse to their knees in absolute terror. The Duke seamlessly switches into intimidation mode, radiating lethal energy as he drags the 2 terrified slackers away for a very intense interrogation. Left completely alone with the jester, he stares at her in absolute awe, praising her for actually solving the case when he never expected her to pull it off. Completely over his dramatic antics, our girl brushes it off, claiming she just got lucky because the culprit was not even trying to hide. The jester flashes a highly suspicious smile, pointing out that the old version of her would have gone completely mad with rage and ordered everyone executed on the spot. Our girl simply states she is not that kind of person anymore. The jester stares at her, dropping his playful act entirely, and softly asks why she went out of her way to protect him. The scene transitions to a flashback of the actual day the jester first tried to assassinate the queen. He is running for his life through the palace, severely battered and bleeding out while the Duke barks orders at a squad of heavily armed guards to capture and kill the assassin at all costs. Bleeding onto the palace floors, the jester mentally kicks himself. He had originally taken the hit job simply because assassinating a legendary queen sounded incredibly fun, but he now realizes that trying to solo storm a royal castle was a massive tactical error. Just as he accepts that getting cornered like a rat is a highly anticlimactic way to die, the original Lavinia suddenly walks into the corridor, looking absolutely majestic. Believing his luck has completely turned around, he smiles and confirms her identity. When she calmly answers yes, he brandishes his little knife and playfully warns her that walking alone at night is a fantastic way to get attacked by bad men. Lavinia just flashes an insanely confident smile and asks if he is implying he is not one of those bad men. Her complete lack of fear throws him off, but before he can actually attack, the Duke and his guards burst onto the scene. The Duke fiercely orders the assassin to step away from the queen. The jester acts sarcastically confused, heavily implying that given their current distance, he can absolutely sever the queen's neck before the guards can even blink. Deciding he might as well take the monarch down with him, he braces for his final strike. Instead of retreating like the Duke commands, Lavinia actually takes a step forward. Closing the distance herself, she casually demands to know his name. Extremely confused by this sudden, weirdly personal interview, he gives his name as Jack. Lavinia smoothly decides his name is acceptable. The jester playfully points out that he is seconds away from getting violently murdered by her guards, but he smugly notes that dying as the man who assassinated the legendary queen will make him famous forever. Lavinia actually laughs out loud, mocking him for caring so much about what other people think. The jester completely freezes, entirely baffled that this woman is laughing in the face of an armed, bleeding assassin. Lavinia then completely ignores him, casually walking past him and dropping a massive bombshell on the Duke. She loudly declares that she actually really likes this man, orders the Duke to pretend this entire assassination attempt never happened, and demands the assassin's injuries be treated immediately. The Duke looks like he just suffered a massive mental breakdown and tries to protest, but Lavinia shoots him a terrifying glare and asks if he is currently deaf to her orders. The Duke instantly folds, bowing and agreeing to comply. Lavinia casually turns back to the completely stunned jester, tells him he officially works for her now, and wishes him luck enjoying his new life. Back in the present, the jester drops his playful facade and seriously asks our girl why she protected him from the false theft charges. Our girl simply replies that she heard him firmly plead his innocence, and she is not the kind of person to blindly ignore someone begging for their life. The jester breaks into a massive, highly entertained laugh. When she awkwardly asks what is so funny, he notes that she has not changed at all since the day they first met. Deciding to properly pay his debts, he casually pulls out a sealed envelope and hands it over. He explains it contains highly classified intel stolen from a neighboring country, completely with a few extra bonus secrets just for fun. Our girl stares at the envelope, deeply impressed that for someone who constantly acts like a complete clown, he is actually a terrifyingly competent spy. The jester smoothly pivots, complimenting her performance during the interrogation. He affectionately compares her to Elise, the famous palace detective that everyone is currently gossiping about. Hearing that name, our girl's brain immediately connects the dots. Elise is the actual protagonist of this entire novel, a genius civil officer who solves palace mysteries. Our girl realizes that if she can track down the protagonist, Elise might actually be able to solve Lavinia's future murder before it even happens. Before she can fully process this game-changing plan, the jester grabs her hand, passionately kisses it, and dramatically requests they have another delightful time together soon. With a final bow, he completely vanishes into thin air like a literal magician. Our girl shouts for him to wait, desperately needing to ask him more questions, but he is already long gone. She sighs in heavy frustration, realizing she just survived an entire crisis and still failed to secure a single solid clue about her impending death, heavily complaining that every man surrounding Lavinia is selfishly uncooperative. A few days later, our girl is sitting at her desk, confirming the jester's wild backstory with the Duke. She realizes that the original Lavinia was either incredibly broad-minded or just severely reckless to recruit her own assassin. The Duke solemnly confirms the jester's history, noting that the jester's elite intelligence work officially cleared his assassination record, but adding that he personally strongly dislikes the man. Our girl mentally notes that the deeply serious Duke and the chaotic jester are polar opposites. When she asks about the jester's official title, the Duke aggressively sighs and explains the jester literally made up the position just for fun, and the original queen actually signed off on it. Their serious meeting is interrupted when Colette, the actual national treasure thief, walks in carrying a massive stack of paperwork. Our girl had boldly appointed her former criminal as her new personal secretary, realizing that anyone capable of single-handedly managing the vault while possessing the sheer guts to insult the queen directly is basically the ultimate employee. When our girl casually asks where Colette actually hid the stolen national treasure, the Duke shoots Colette an absolutely lethal glare and coldly explains it was found stuffed in a hidden compartment inside her personal bookshelf. Our girl quickly tells the Duke to stop bullying her new secretary. Looking at the incredibly tense dynamic between her deadly knight and her criminal secretary, our girl feels a weird sense of hope. She calculates that if she keeps aggressively recruiting capable allies and systematically knocking out her problems one by one, she might actually survive this novel. She mentally marks the Duke down as a solid ally, before pivoting back to business. She tells Colette to clear her afternoon schedule because they have a very specific project to tackle. The scene shifts to the afternoon, revealing our girl standing in the garden directing four muscular men who are aggressively attempting to scale a massive wall with a heavy rope, looking exactly like they are staging a highly coordinated prison break. Watching four thoroughly exhausted guards aggressively struggle to climb a wall with a simple rope, our girl realizes that a physical security audit is absolutely necessary. To catch Lavinia's future assassin, she desperately needs to figure out exactly how someone could break into her royal bedroom. The guards look like their souls are practically leaving their bodies from the physical exertion, leading her to conclude that forcing non-experts to do extreme parkour is probably a massive human resources violation. Her corporate crisis is interrupted when the jester suddenly pops up right behind her. Peeking over her shoulder, he cheerfully notes that while the climbing exercise looks incredibly fun, it is way too intense for a bunch of amateurs. Without waiting for an invitation, he casually strolls up to the wall and scales the entire thing barehanded, reaching the balcony without breaking a single drop of sweat. Our girl stares at him in absolute awe. Noting that this was not even the real, heavily trapped wall, she instantly informs him that he is officially hired for a very specific job. We jump into a quick flashback where our girl lays out the ultimate security test. She formally orders the jester to break into her actual bedroom. This time, the route is fully armed with deadly, crime-proof security traps, complete with motion sensor arrows that can turn a thrown apple into a shish kebab. The jester whistles, noting the setup sounds incredibly rough and could genuinely end his life. But our girl smoothly hypes him up, insisting that if anyone can survive it, it is definitely him. With his ego thoroughly stroked, he promises to live up to her dangerously high expectations. Back in the present, our girl sits alone in her bedroom. She mentally calculates that the original culprit had to breach the balcony, surviving the deadly traps and scaling the impossible outer wall. Right on cue, the jester casually strolls in from the balcony, proving he flawlessly survived the literal death trap. Our girl instantly bursts into highly satisfied applause. The jester happily soaks in the cheers, proudly declaring that his motto is to always deliver on his promises. Switching back to detective mode, she asks for his professional review of the climbing route. He drops his playful tone and seriously explains that the entry path is incredibly dangerous. Without elite physical skills and a deep, intimate knowledge of the palace layout, breaking in would be completely impossible. Our girl mentally notes that someone with his exact skill set could pull off the murder with terrifying ease. Sensing the shift in her mood, the jester closes the distance between them, leaning in dangerously close to ask why exactly she had him run this elaborate obstacle course. Our girl realizes this is the ultimate test. If he is the true culprit, there is zero chance he would pass up an opportunity like being completely alone with her in a compromised room. Acting on pure adrenaline, she suddenly whips out a dagger, throws herself on top of him, and firmly pins him to the bed. Holding the blade right at his neck, she intensely asks if an intruder could theoretically assassinate her like this. The jester does not even flinch. He casually eyes the blade and notes that while the position is a bit dangerous, taking her life would be incredibly simple for anyone skilled enough to breach the room in the first place. Getting her final confirmation, our girl mentally groans. She realizes she absolutely cannot cross him off her suspect list. Even if he is playing nice right now, he is fully capable of turning her into a past tense at any given moment. She heavily complains internally about how utterly exhausting it is to constantly doubt every single man in her life. The tension totally shifts when the jester calmly asks if she plans on getting off of him anytime soon. She quickly explains the dagger is just a harmless toy, assuring him she would never use a real weapon. The jester smirks, clarifying that he is not worried about the toy knife at all. He smoothly warns her that if she keeps aggressively pinning him down on a bed, there is absolutely no telling what he might do next. Our girl's brain instantly short-circuits. Getting wildly flustered, she scrambles to explain that the situation is a complete misunderstanding, but the jester simply pulls her completely flush against his chest. Radiating pure rom-com energy, he whispers that if this is what she truly wants, he welcomes her advances anytime. Our girl internally screams, realizing this highly romantic development is completely derailing her murder investigation. As they finally start to untangle themselves, he pulls her close one more time, shamelessly demanding a little reward for surviving her deadly obstacle course. Before she can process the flirtation, the door violently flies open. The Duke bursts into the room, instantly taking in the highly compromising scene. Our girl frantically tries to salvage the situation, awkwardly ordering the Duke to wait outside until the room is secure. But the Duke is radiating absolute murderous intent and fiercely orders the jester to step away from the Queen immediately. The jester laughs it off, waving his hands and declaring that he is actually not the bad guy this time. Deciding to evacuate before the Duke actually disconnects his head from his neck, he cheerfully announces his exit. Slipping back out onto the balcony, the jester pauses just long enough to drop one final, massive bombshell. He casually warns our girl that she had better be extremely careful around the Chancellor. As he completely vanishes into the night, our girl is left standing there, severely questioning reality and loudly asking what on earth that is supposed to mean. Our girl stares at the empty balcony, incredibly frustrated, and shouts to the night air, demanding to know what the jester meant by warning her about the Chancellor. The jester's voice echoes back from the darkness, teasingly telling her that she will completely understand once she actually looks into him. With that extremely vague clue, he completely vanishes into thin air. The scene shifts to our girl's office. She sits at her desk, flanked by the Duke and her new secretary Colette. The Duke solemnly hands over a thick file, confirming it is the complete background report she requested on the Chancellor. Our girl thanks him and dives right into the paperwork. The report details Chancellor David Dior's meteoric rise. Born as the second son of a humble shoemaker in the lower town, he was officially a commoner. However, he possessed a terrifying level of natural charisma, successfully launching multiple massive business ventures. After wrapping up his mandatory military service, he pivoted directly into politics, fully backed by several highly powerful patrons. He aggressively pushed popular policies, instantly won over the public, and shattered national records by becoming the youngest chancellor in the country's history at only 22 years old. Reading the report, our girl mentally notes that he is a brutally ambitious workaholic. But the jester's final warning echoes in her mind, heavily urging her to dig deeper. She turns to Colette and explains her current survival strategy. Since half the kingdom is apparently unhappy that she is queen, she desperately needs to systematically figure out who is an actual ally and who is an active threat. She orders Colette to ruthlessly dig into the Chancellor's private schedule and track all of his movements. Later, while walking down the corridor, the Duke notes that the Chancellor has been holding suspiciously frequent meetings with the Western Lords. Colette chimes in, reporting that the Chancellor is officially scheduled to go on a hunting trip with them this coming weekend. Our girl asks for clarification on what a royal hunting trip actually entails. Colette explains it is a highly popular activity among male nobles, where they basically compete over who can kill the biggest animal and violently flatter each other over it. She notes it is entirely a game of networking, hospitality, and enforcing social ranks. Our girl mentally translates this, realizing that a royal hunting trip is basically just a high-stakes, extremely violent version of a corporate golf outing. Deciding she needs to see the Chancellor in his natural political habitat, she figures that letting an ambitious politician run wild without supervision is a terrible idea. She turns to the Duke and casually asks if he happens to be good at hunting. Meanwhile, in his office, the Chancellor practically rolls his eyes at his subordinate, stating he plans to just half-heartedly suffer through the trip. But the subordinate drops a massive bomb, revealing that Her Majesty officially RSVP'd. The Chancellor looks like his brain just suffered a critical system error, loudly asking what she is thinking. A few days later, the hunting trip kicks off. Our girl arrives flawlessly dressed for the occasion alongside the Duke. She immediately spots the Chancellor looking incredibly stressed. Feigning innocence, she casually asks if something is wrong, cheerfully noting it is perfect hunting weather, and he looks entirely too gloomy. The Chancellor quickly recovers, smoothly complimenting her outfit before turning his attention to the Duke. He notes that it is incredibly rare to see the stoic Black Knight at a social hunting event. The Duke flatly responds that he is strictly there to attend to Her Majesty. The Chancellor smirks, noting that the famously emotionless Duke seems to possess a surprising amount of passion when it comes to Lady Lavinia. Internally, the Chancellor is completely spiraling. He watches the Duke gently teach the Queen how to handle a crossbow and admits he has absolutely no idea what she is currently plotting. Trying to insert himself into the narrative, he approaches her and smoothly offers her a pair of hunting gloves. He warns her to be careful, advises her not to stray from the Duke's side, and politely excuses himself to head deeper into the woods. As he walks away, he mentally curses himself, severely questioning why he is awkwardly forcing his goodwill on her. Watching him leave, our girl is equally confused, wondering if his consideration is genuine or if he is currently plotting a massive trap. Her thoughts are interrupted when Marquis Karamari, the man who originally plotted her assassination, approaches. He states he never imagined she would actually join the hunt. Our girl mentally notes that since they are in the West, it makes perfect sense that he is here. The Marquis passionately thanks her, explaining that because of her massive royal support, the Western lands are actually recovering and his stress has drastically decreased. He practically radiates gratitude, vowing that he can never thank her enough. Our girl mentally pats herself on the back, highly satisfied that fixing just one terrible plot point completely changed his character arc suddenly. The Duke loudly clears his throat, awkwardly reminding his brother-in-law that he is also currently standing there. The Marquis nervously greets him, completely deflating from his heroic posture. Deeper in the woods, the Chancellor fires his crossbow at a bird and completely misses. However, The surrounding nobles immediately launch into aggressive flattery, loudly praising his marvelous skill and firmly insisting that his shot was absolutely flawless. The Chancellor internally rolls his eyes, knowing the nobles will just secretly buy a dead bird from the local hunters to cover for his terrible aim anyway. He decides to just enjoy the ego boost. Watching from a distance, our girl completely cringes. Confirming that this entire event is literally just corporate networking with weapons, she realizes his political influence is massive. When the Chancellor suggests they split up for a while, she immediately orders the Duke to secretly track him. As they tail the Chancellor, our girl asks the Marquis why David Dior is so insanely popular. The Marquis explains that the Chancellor is an absolute master at making allies by finding a common enemy. He expertly rallies people together by uniting them in hatred against a single target. Our girl instantly realizes that she, the famously wicked Queen Lavinia, is literally the perfect common enemy. The Marquis grimly confirms this, noting that while the Chancellor climbed to the top using this exact method, he also earned the intense, burning hatred of everyone he stepped on to get there. Before our girl can fully process this, she gets entirely too distracted by the political gossip, violently trips over a rock, and starts falling backward. The Duke instantly catches her with lightning-fast reflexes. He softly asks if she is hurt. When she thanks him and confirms she is fine, he awkwardly looks away, highly blushing as he softly warns her to be careful on the rough terrain. Their weirdly romantic moment is violently shattered by the sound of a terrifying scream echoing through the forest. Our girl completely freezes, demanding to know what just happened. Rushing to the source of the terrifying scream, our girl and the Duke find the Chancellor sprawled on the dirt, currently being hunted by a massive, extremely angry tiger. The Chancellor realizes this is a highly coordinated assassination attempt by a jungle cat. He frantically calculates which of his political rivals set this trap, violently refusing to become exotic cat food in the middle of a networking event. Just as the beast leaps for the killing blow, our girl blindly fires her crossbow. Against all logical odds, the arrow actually hits the target. Her brain practically buffers in shock at her own accuracy. Before the tiger can recover from the sudden piercing, the Duke swoops in and cleanly slices the massive beast into a permanent nap. When the other nobles finally catch up to the scene, our girl instantly launches into a fake applause. She loudly praises the Chancellor's brilliant marksmanship and the Duke's flawless swordplay, completely rewriting history on the spot. The Chancellor shoots her a highly confused look. Leaning in, she quietly explains that being rescued by the famously wicked queen would completely tank his political reputation. Besides, she severely wants to avoid the spotlight and absolutely loves the idea of him owing her a massive favor. Taking the hint, the Chancellor smoothly accepts the unearned praises from the breathless nobles. The Duke quietly double-checks if she is really okay with handing over the glory. She waves it off and sincerely thanks him for his lethal reflexes. The Duke looks completely blue-screened by her sudden gratitude, awkwardly complimenting her archery skills, while our girl feels both highly validated and deeply unsettled by his intense blushing. Later that night, the palace party is buzzing with the newly fabricated heroic tale of the Chancellor and the Duke. Sipping her drink, our girl internally laughs at the fact that no one would ever suspect the villainess of actually saving the day. She tries to enjoy the peace, but catches several nobles making awkward eye contact and aggressively blushing at her, making her feel highly uncomfortable in her own ballroom. The Chancellor suddenly approaches, pulling her away from the crowd and out onto the balcony, with the Duke silently trailing them like a heavily armed shadow. Our girl severely wonders why the ultimate networking addict is abandoning his own victory party right when he is the hero of the hour. The Chancellor stares at the moon, formally thanking her for saving his life and praising her hidden combat talent. She quickly deflects, insisting it was pure, unadulterated luck. Dropping the small talk, the Chancellor drops a massive political nuke. He reveals that the assassin from her birthday party was hired by none other than Field Marshal Colbert, the Army's Supreme Commander. Apparently, the Iron Blood is an aggressive traditionalist who completely despises women in power and firmly believes the throne belongs exclusively to a man. Our girl mentally notes that his medieval misogyny leaves her completely speechless. The Chancellor further explains that the military is desperate to stage a coup, and their golden ticket is Noah, Lavinia's actual younger brother, and one of her top murder suspects. Handing her a sleek black envelope, the Chancellor casually offers his own private intel on the military, heavily suggesting she unleash her chaotic jester to investigate the military's movements. Utterly stunned by this massive handout, our girl accidentally lets her inner monologue slip, bluntly asking what his actual motive is. She quickly braces herself, knowing he never does anything without a selfish agenda. The Chancellor simply admits that he absolutely hates owing people favors because it makes his skin crawl, even though he thoroughly enjoys holding favors over everyone else's heads. Our girl flashes a genuine smile, teasing that this highly manipulative trait is his true nature. He unapologetically agrees, blaming his ruthless survival instincts on his commoner roots. She easily brushes it off, admitting she despises stiff formalities and actually feels incredibly relaxed talking to him without any political filters. The Chancellor looks like his entire worldview just got forcefully rebooted by her genuine warmth. Our girl internally marvels that the ultimate political snake can actually make such a stunned, vulnerable face. His mind flashes back to his impoverished childhood, remembering a moment where he was polishing shoes on the dirt street, watching a young Lavinia ride past in a glittering royal carriage. Back then, he believed she existed in an entirely unreachable universe. Snapping back to the present, our girl suggests they head back inside to the party. Instead of moving aside, the Chancellor steps directly into her personal space, completely blocking her path. As she looks up in utter confusion, he smoothly asks if she would stay out on the balcony with him just a little bit longer, dropping a heavy dose of romance that absolutely nobody saw coming. Our girl demands to know why the Chancellor is suddenly trapping her on the balcony. He smoothly insists he simply wants her to trust him more. Refusing to be charmed, she points out that handing over classified military intel is already a massive down payment for the royal consort position. He openly admits he wants that title more than any man alive, but smoothly pivots, claiming that right now, he is entirely focused on her as a person. Realizing he is expertly controlling the pace of the conversation, our girl mentally hits the brakes. She firmly places a hand flat against his chest to physically stop his advance, bluntly stating she is absolutely not ready to lower her shields around him. Refusing to take the hint, the Chancellor places his own hand over hers, purring that the extreme difficulty of winning her heart only makes him want the spot by her side even more. Before the romantic tension can escalate any further, the Duke materializes out of the shadows. Radiating absolute lethal energy, he aggressively grabs the Chancellor's hand and issues a highly threatening warning to step away from the Queen. The Chancellor glares right back, mockingly calling the Duke a dog and questioning his rude interruption. Unfazed, the Duke states he is strictly enforcing Her Majesty's clear rejection. The two men lock eyes in a fierce, glittering standoff. Deciding to retreat, the Chancellor blames his bold behavior on the wine, dramatically bows, and asks our girl not to forget his passionate confession before strutting away. Our girl mentally reboots, deeply relieved the crisis is over. She sincerely thanks the Duke for his highly reassuring presence and for saving her from becoming exotic cat food earlier. The Duke immediately downplays his heroics, insisting it is his literal job description. He smoothly flips the gratitude, passionately thanking her for showing his sister and brother-in-law mercy, admitting he shudders to think what would have happened to his family without her compassion. Capitalizing on the peaceful moment, our girl asks how he learned to expertly slice up massive jungle beasts. The Duke dives into his backstory, revealing his family is famous for extreme martial arts. While his father was a gentle soul, his mother ruthlessly drilled combat skills into him and his sister from a young age. Inheriting the title of Duke at just 14, he basically lived on brutal battlefields until Her Majesty officially appointed him as her captain of the guard. Gently tracing his infamous little dagger, he vulnerably admits that fighting is the only thing he knows, which is exactly why he desperately wants his sister to live a happy, peaceful life in his place. Hearing this deeply emotional confession, our girl is completely touched. She realizes he is actually a massively devoted, family-minded older brother. Mentally recalculating her survival odds, she notes that since she actively saved his family instead of executing them, his canonical murder motive is entirely deleted. Without a trace of murderous intent in his eyes, she happily concludes his threat level has completely plummeted. Meanwhile, back inside the glittering ballroom, the Chancellor is casually sipping a drink with his blonde lackey. Radiating pure, unadulterated arrogance, he orders his subordinate to officially proceed with their secret plan. He remains absolutely convinced that he is the ultimate candidate for royal consort and that Lavinia will inevitably choose him. Out on the balcony, the Duke completely ruins the romantic mood by issuing a stern warning. He firmly advises against trusting the Chancellor, pointing out the man has deep ties to the military and likely would have hidden the assassin intel entirely if she had not saved his life earlier. Our girl completely agrees. She mentally calculates that the Chancellor was definitely just weighing whether the Queen or the army was the better political investment. Knowing everyone is violently eager to end her life, she vows to ruthlessly investigate every single suspect. Despite her bold words, a wave of deep paranoia hits her. She genuinely wants to rely on her highly capable knight, but her lingering corporate trauma makes her terrified of suffering yet another ultimate betrayal. The Duke instantly senses her emotional shift and asks if she is okay. She awkwardly blames the sudden chill in the air, but the Duke sees right through the lie. He bluntly states that she still does not completely trust him, casually adding that he absolutely does not mind. Before she can scramble for an excuse, the Duke suddenly whips out his infamous dagger. Our girl's heart practically stops, utterly terrified he is about to fulfill his assassin destiny. Instead, the Duke flips the blade and points it directly at his own chest. Staring intensely into her eyes, he fiercely declares that his life belongs entirely to her, and he is fully prepared to prove it. The Duke dramatically points his infamous little dagger directly at his own chest, fully prepared to forcefully cancel his own subscription to life if he ever betrays her trust. Our girl completely panics and physically stops him, deeply confused as to why he would jump straight to self-elimination. Staring at her with absolute devotion, the Duke explains that if he cannot protect her life, his own existence is entirely pointless. Our girl internally questions if earning her trust is really worth dying for, still baffled by his intense loyalty despite saving his family. Gazing at his blade, the Duke's mind flashes back to the day the original Lavinia recruited him. She had completely ignored the terrifying rumors about him, instead praising his fighting style as a single, beautifully deadly blade, and officially claiming him as her sword. Snapping back to the present, he drops to one knee, desperately begging to swear his entire life to her once more. Our girl wonders if he actually grasps the massive weight of dedicating his entire existence to her. Deciding to fully lean into his loyalty, she places her hand over his on the dagger handle. She officially acknowledges him as her knight, internally hoping that even if her villainous death is hard-coded into the universe, he will at least stay by her side. She hands the dagger back, firmly deciding to cross him off her suspect list for now. Later that evening, our girl is lying in bed, mentally reviewing the chaotic tiger assassination attempt. She realizes that letting the Chancellor become exotic cat food might have severely lowered her chances of getting murdered later, but she simply could not ignore the terrified look on his face. Spiraling over her awful survival options, she vows to hunt down her true killer before drifting off to sleep. Suddenly, her soul practically leaves her body, and she finds herself floating like a ghost inside Lavinia's bedroom. She realizes this is a futuristic vision of the exact crime scene right after the Queen's murder. The Chancellor, the Duke, and a terrified maid are standing over the aftermath. The Chancellor coldly points out that the murder weapon is undeniably the Duke's personalized dagger. The Duke completely freezes in absolute shock. As he furiously tries to lunge forward, the royal guards instantly block him. The Chancellor ruthlessly warns him that they are both prime suspects and aggressively advises him to stop acting so incredibly guilty. Before the Duke can explode, a blonde woman steps into the room. It is Elise, the novel's brilliant detective protagonist. She calmly tells the Duke to stand down, confidently promising to uncover the true culprit. Our girl abruptly wakes up, her entire body feeling like it was run over by a heavy carriage thanks to the intense prophetic dream. Before she can even process the trauma, she hears aggressive shouting outside. Following the noise, she spots the blonde detective from her dream dropping absolute truth bombs on a crowd. Channeling pure genius energy, Elise drops her famous catchphrase about eliminating the impossible before entirely dismantling a sweaty Viscount's alibi. She flawlessly explains how he shot a beast with a stimulant-laced rifle bullet to trigger a frenzy, and then dramatically sliced his own arm with a knife to play the innocent victim. The Chancellor steps up, inspecting the Viscount's arm and confirming it is a clean blade cut, not a jagged animal scratch. Realizing he is completely cornered, the Viscount instantly folds, dropping to his knees and crying that he was just following orders. Our girl watches the heroine brutally and mercilessly solve the case, exactly like she was described in the novel. She calculates that making friends with the genius protagonist is the ultimate survival cheat code. Stepping into the spotlight, our girl gracefully praises Elise's flawless deduction. Flashing her most charming smile, she casually invites the detective to a private tea party. Elise's brain practically short-circuits, completely baffled and terrified that the kingdom's famously wicked queen just casually asked her on a friend date. Fast forward to the tea party, where our girl is waiting at a meticulously arranged table in a massive garden. The blonde detective, Elise, arrives looking entirely out of her element. Our girl warmly welcomes her, gesturing to a table completely overflowing with cakes, pastries, and high-end tea. Elise looks completely shocked by the extravagant spread. Our girl casually tells her to help herself to whatever she likes, mentally patting herself on the back. She remembers from the novel that Elise has a massive sweet tooth, and calculates that if she can bribe the genius detective with enough sugar, she might actually borrow her deductive reasoning skills to avoid a premature death. Elise takes a polite bite before immediately dropping her detective skills on the table. She bluntly asks if Her Majesty summoned her to consult on a specific case, noting the highly suspicious number of incidents surrounding the Queen lately. Our girl's brain practically stutters. She realizes that trying to casually bribe the greatest detective in the kingdom with cake was incredibly naive. Deciding to just go for it, she casually drops a hypothetical scenario. If a woman is surrounded by 5 men, and one of them is secretly plotting her murder, how exactly would someone go about unmasking him? Elise blinks in surprise at the highly specific and terrifying hypothetical, but immediately shifts into detective mode. She explains that if the murder has not happened yet, you desperately need to find clear, undeniable signs of murderous intent. Our girl agrees, noting that any decent assassin would actively hide their intent. Elise nods, explaining that taking a life puts a massive psychological strain on the human heart. Normally, people live with heavy chains holding back that dark urge. However, when a specific trigger snaps those chains, the culprit crosses the line into murder. Elise calmly adds that there are terrifying exceptions, specifically, people who never had those chains to begin with. Hearing that, our girl's brain immediately flashes an image of the highly unhinged jester. As for the Duke, she genuinely believes he will not betray her, but acknowledges he is absolutely merciless toward his enemies. She sincerely thanks Elise for the terrifyingly accurate psychological profile. Elise brightens up, completely thrilled to have helped. Our girl smiles, promising to return the favor if Elise ever needs anything. Taking the offer immediately, Elise blushes deeply and nervously asks Her Majesty for romantic advice, specifically asking how to get closer to a man she likes. Our girl mentally squeals, immediately knowing exactly who she is talking about. It is Duke William Alfred, the official male lead of the novel, the powerful noble who constantly protects Elise from palace bullies and supports her detective work. The slow burn, unspoken romance between them kept the novel's readers completely on the edge of their seats. Elise nervously explains that the man has a significantly higher status than her, and she constantly worries that she is just bothering him. Our girl mentally contrasts Elise's incredibly wholesome, peaceful romance problem with her own daily struggle to avoid getting stabbed. Channeling her inner romantic guru, she gently advises Elise that while considering status is important, her own feelings are what truly matter. She warmly encourages the detective to treasure her emotions so that when the perfect chance arrives, she can confidently confess. Elise lights up like a Christmas tree, practically vibrating with happiness. She earnestly thanks the Queen, declaring she feels completely re-energized. Our girl mentally restrains herself, desperately wanting to drop a dozen spoilers from her novel knowledge to speedrun their romance, but firmly decides to hold back. Just as Elise nervously stammers that the Duke is a wonderful man, the actual Duke Claude materializes out of thin air right behind her, radiating his usual intense, intimidating energy. Elise practically jumps out of her skin in sheer terror, frantically apologizing for staying too long before violently bowing and sprinting away from the terrifying knight. Our girl completely ignores her panicked exit, warmly thanking Claude for bringing her the requested documents and praising him for always being so helpful. Claude quietly confirms the delivery, but as our girl mentally celebrates successfully befriending the protagonist, Claude abruptly speaks up. He flatly states that he is also a duke. Our girl blanks, letting out a highly confused noise. Claude awkwardly mutters that the Duke who serves Her Majesty is, before abruptly cutting himself off and looking away, highly embarrassed. Our girl severely questions why her fiercely lethal knight is suddenly sulking over another man's title, but her train of thought immediately derails. Connecting the dots, she realizes that if Elise is actively seeking romantic advice, the male lead, Duke William Alfred, should be making his grand entrance into the plot any second now. Her internal warning sirens instantly start blaring at maximum volume, convinced a massive disaster is approaching. A while later, a teacup violently shatters on the floor. Someone screams in absolute terror that Duke William Alfred has just collapsed, while Noah, the Queen's famously exiled younger brother, screams the Duke's name in pure panic. The young prince is hosting a lovely tea party. Duke William takes a sip of his tea and immediately hits the pavement. Utter chaos ensues. People frantically scream for William to stay with them and yell for a doctor, completely horrified by his sudden collapse. The scene shifts as the Duke rushes over to our girl with terrible news, announcing that her younger brother, Noah, has been arrested. Our heroine's brain momentarily short-circuits. She severely questions why on earth Noah would be arrested as a suspected culprit, trying to make sense of the madness while briskly walking down to the dungeon. Arriving at the cell, Noah looks up and weakly calls for his sister. Our girl stares at him, suddenly struck by the realization that the male lead of the novel looks infinitely more stunning in real life than on the page. She simply listens as the gorgeous prisoner apologizes for showing her such a disgraceful sight after being apart for so long. She demands to know exactly what happened. Noah explains there was an attempted poisoning at his tea party, and the victim was Duke William. As soon as William drank the tea Noah recommended, he passed out and has not woken up since. Because the poison was exclusively found in William's cup, the guards immediately took Noah into custody. Our girl loudly protests that throwing him in a cell is going way too far without actual proof. The Duke stands in silence for a second before gently reminding her that she was actually the one who ordered Noah to be instantly imprisoned if he ever caused trouble. Our girl mentally curses the original Lavinia for leaving her with this PR disaster. Noah graciously takes the blame, apologizing for hosting the party and causing her a headache. Our heroine realizes with a heavy heart that this boy genuinely adores his older sister from the bottom of his heart, despite her treating him like absolute garbage. She knows that in mystery plots, a deeply devoted sibling turning to hatred is a guaranteed recipe for murder. Deciding that leaving him to rot and build resentment is terrible for her life expectancy, she figures this is the perfect chance to win him over instead. Opening the cell door, she steps inside and asks point-blank if he tried to poison his guest. Noah vehemently denies it, insisting he would never hurt his friend. Our girl offers a warm smile and promises to believe him. She already knows the real culprit because this exact case happened in the novel, so she vows to catch the true criminal and gently pats him on the head, telling him to sit tight. Noah is so overwhelmed by her basic human decency that his eyeballs start sweating with joy. He flashes a bright smile, begging his sister not to overwork herself. Back in the corridor, the Duke admits he never expected Her Majesty to be so incredibly gentle with her brother. Our girl confesses that her heart has always been embarrassingly weak for pretty faces, even knowing he is a potential threat. She mentally scolds herself, realizing this exact softness is how she lost her company in her past life. She verbally notes how cruel she is for stripping away his rights only to show kindness on a random whim. The Duke respectfully disagrees, stating that the current version of Her Majesty is absolutely wonderful. Caught completely off guard by the earnest compliment, our girl practically turns into a glowing tomato. She flusters through a quick thank you and firmly states she has a promise to keep and a case to solve. They arrive at the crime scene. Our girl runs through the novel's lore in her head, recalling that the actual culprit is a young noble lady named Giselle Roan. Giselle is the story's villainess who harbored a massive obsession with Duke William and decided to poison him after her relentless marriage proposals were aggressively rejected. Our girl also remembers this specific case is deeply tied to the blonde detective. Right on cue, she spots Elise having a complete mental breakdown. The heroine is sobbing hysterically, utterly panicked about what to do next. Before our girl can even process the crying, Elise launches herself forward and traps our heroine in a desperate hug. Our girl realizes the legendary great detective has officially hit a massive slump, leaving her to wonder if she can actually solve this entire mess herself. Our girl stands at the crime scene, mentally running through the chaotic facts of the case. Duke William collapsed immediately after drinking the tea Noah brewed, yet no poison was found anywhere in the garden, except inside William's specific cup. She severely questions how on earth the real culprit managed to poison a cup that only Noah and William touched. She knows for a fact that the villainous Giselle is the mastermind, but her memory completely blanks on the finer details like the exact trick and the hard evidence. Staring at Elise, our girl figures it is way better for the novel's official heroine to crack the case rather than her, the villainess, stepping on any toes. However, she quickly remembers a terrible plot point. In the original story, Elise takes way too long to bounce back from her current emotional slump, which leaves William in massive danger, seriously traumatizes the blonde detective, and irreparably damages their relationship. Knowing that, our heroine realizes she absolutely has to intervene. Right on cue, Elise's legs give out, and she starts to collapse. Our girl instinctively lunges forward and catches her, gently ordering the detective to take a breath and calm down. Elise softly thanks her. Our heroine mentally admits that she initially approached the detective for her own survival, but seeing her looking so utterly defeated, she genuinely cannot bring herself to abandon her. Taking charge, our girl asks if Elise is worried about Duke William. The blonde detective admits she is completely terrified because she heard Giselle is currently parked at William's bedside, aggressively insisting on nursing him. Elise expresses a terrible gut feeling about the setup, realizing she needs to solve this mystery immediately. Watching her panic, our girl notes just how deeply Elise is in love with the unconscious Duke. Deciding the best way to help is to play the role of the strict, intimidating queen, she harshly scolds Elise to pull herself together, pointing out that she cannot possibly investigate a murder while being a weeping mess. Our girl confidently notes that Elise already suspects who the culprit is, promises to stay by her side, and firmly extends a hand. Fired up by the royal pep talk, Elise eagerly grabs her hand and stands tall. The scene sharply cuts to Duke William lying unconscious in his bed. Giselle hovers over him, flashing a completely unhinged, devilish grin. She whispers to his unmoving body that she is so sorry she had to poison him, but he left her with absolutely no other choice. Promising that he will soon be hers forever, she pulls out a literal knife, inviting him to fall into hell with her. Suddenly, a voice interrupts from the doorway, apologizing for the intrusion. Without missing a beat, Giselle ninja slides the blade straight under the bed, just as the doctor steps into the room to check on the Duke. Flipping a switch, Giselle launches into an Oscar-worthy performance, violently fake crying about how William has not woken up and desperately begging the doctor to save him. Back in the garden, Elise officially locks in on Giselle as the prime suspect. She immediately starts scouring the tea party table Noah set up, desperate to figure out exactly how the villainess managed to administer the poison. Watching the detective go to work, our girl steps in and tells the Duke that they are going to leave the crime scene to Elise. Instead, the two of them are going to investigate the exact composition of the poison and track down how it was obtained. The Duke completely agrees, noting that identifying the toxic brew is the ultimate evidence needed to corner Giselle, not to mention it is absolutely critical for the medical team treating William. Hearing this plan, Elise practically vibrates with relief and profusely thanks Her Majesty for the lifeline. There is just one tiny problem. Our girl mentally realizes that the specific men she needs to recruit for this poison investigation are absolute walking red flags. The scene shifts as the blonde psycho and the Prime Minister confidently stroll into the room. The blonde psycho gives a dramatic bow, playfully asking if she called for them, while the Prime Minister smoothly mentions he already heard about the disaster at Noah's tea party and wants to know what she needs. Our girl politely thanks them for showing up, while internally having a minor panic attack about the inevitable consequences of owing these two massive favors. Still, knowing she has to protect Noah and Elise, she swallows her pride and explicitly begs for their cooperation. Both men are completely stunned to hear the notoriously proud queen sincerely asking for help. Recovering quickly, the blonde psycho grins, deciding this little murder investigation sounds incredibly fun. The Prime Minister just smirks, noting that his help heavily depends on her terms and conditions. Refusing to be intimidated, our girl flashes a perfectly confident smile, reminding them that this is a direct request from the queen and assuring them that they can definitely count on her. Our girl stands her ground, reminding the two massive walking red flags that this is an official request from the queen and they can expect highly profitable results in return. The blonde psycho thoroughly reads over the case details and confidently volunteers to trace the poison supply, bragging that his underground connections know absolutely everything about the shady dealers in the city, right down to their extended family trees. He flashes a wildly creepy smile. Our heroine mentally notes that having an assassin's Rolodex on speed dial is incredibly helpful, but she severely questions why he is so willing to save Duke William Alfred, considering helping people is not exactly in his typical job description. Opting for absolute boss energy, she casually informs him that she simply decided it is better to tame William than let him die, firmly asking if the jester has any problems with her royal orders. The blonde psycho is momentarily stunned by her sheer audacity but quickly recovers with a grin, promising to completely live up to her expectations as long as the reward is massively worth his while. Flustered by his intense promise, our girl practically trips over her words to agree. Meanwhile, the Chancellor aggressively inspects the paperwork and announces he will have a special researcher examine the actual poison, prioritizing the discovery of a proper antidote. Our girl practically sighs with relief and thanks him, but the Chancellor just smirks, noting that while it is an absolute honor to have Her Majesty rely on him, his political favors do not come cheap. She mentally prepares her wallet. The Chancellor then smoothly offers to investigate the source of the poison as well, completely stepping on the jester's toes. The blonde psycho immediately shuts that down, firmly stating that Lady Lavinia entrusted that specific task to him and he refuses to hand it over. The Chancellor dramatically rolls his eyes, taking a cheap shot by claiming that tracking illegal toxins perfectly suits a common assassin. Not missing a beat, the jester fires back that the Chancellor could easily track the poison himself since he seems suspiciously knowledgeable about toxic substances. The Chancellor completely loses his cool, accusing the jester of being desperate to steal other people's achievements, and loudly declares that once he is officially chosen as the royal consort, he will abolish the ridiculous court jester position permanently. The blonde psycho completely mocks his delusional dream, firing back that if the absolute nightmare of the Chancellor becoming consort ever actually came true, he would rather die. Before a literal fistfight can break out, Duke Pauldine steps in, begging the two grown men to stop burning Her Majesty's ears with their absolute nonsense. Our girl jumps in, firmly stating that while she appreciates their sky-high confidence, they need to stop bickering and just bring her results. The three men respectfully step outside into the corridor. The second the door closes, the Chancellor shudders, noting that Her Majesty is infinitely scarier when she is smiling. The jester just chuckles, completely enchanted, and points out that her terrifying expressions are exactly what makes her so ridiculously charming. The Chancellor scoffs, accusing the jester of sounding like a lovesick fool, to which the blonde psycho just shrugs. Duke Pauldine, looking like a man who desperately needs a 2-week vacation, reminds them they are no longer in front of the queen and can argue all they want, as long as they do not betray her expectations. The jester smoothly agrees, insisting that delivering results is exactly what a jester is for. The Chancellor firmly reiterates that he is the only man suited to be royal consort and promises to prove it. They storm off in opposite directions, leaving Duke Pauldine standing alone, completely drained of his will to live by their exhausting drama. The scene sharply cuts back to the unconscious Duke William Alfred. Giselle is practically glued to his bedside, leaning over him like a sleep paralysis demon. Suddenly, the temperature drops, and she feels a violent chill run down her spine. A hooded figure materializes in the room, ominously warning her that Her Majesty's dogs have officially started to move. The figure coldly advises that if she truly wants to live and die with her beloved Duke, she had better wrap this little murder plot up immediately. Giselle stares in shock, demanding to know how the intruder possesses such restricted information and why they are even bothering to help her. Before she can get a single answer, a butler opens the door, asking if he just heard someone speaking. Giselle blinks, and the hooded figure has completely vanished into thin air. Without missing a beat, she looks down at William with a terrifyingly calm smile and assures the butler that she is completely alone. Meanwhile, our girl glances over at Elise, mentally wondering if the blonde detective has managed to unearth any actual clues while she was busy wrangling her chaotic male leads. Elise is standing there, completely lost in deep thought. The detective casually mutters that the culprit never physically touched the teacup, meaning they had to use a completely different trick to bypass the security and slip the poison in. She admits she is 99% of the way there, but just cannot snap the final puzzle pieces together. Our girl gently places a hand on her shoulder, radiating supportive sister energy, and promises that she believes in her ability to find the answer. Utterly taken aback by the genuine encouragement, Elise flashes a soft smile and playfully asks how Her Majesty thinks the poison was delivered. Our girl instantly freezes. She frantically searches her memories of the original novel, trying to dig up the murder trick, but her brain completely flatlines. Realizing she is running on fumes, she mentally complains that her brain is practically begging for a massive dose of sugar. Elise giggles at the Queen's very public internal crisis, noting that burning too many brain cells always makes a person crave sweets. But right in the middle of her laugh, a light bulb completely shatters above the detective's head. Our girl's eyes go wide, asking if she finally cracked it. With absolute confidence, Elise firmly announces that she has completely figured out the culprit's trick. Back in the sick room, the villainess pulls out a dagger, dramatically professing her twisted love for the unconscious Duke William. Just as she prepares to plunge the blade into his chest, the door flies open. Our girl, Noah, and Elise completely crash the murder party. Giselle whips around in utter shock. Our heroine casually orders her to drop the knife, boldly announcing that the gig is up and they already know she poisoned the Duke. Playing the absolute fool, Giselle fiercely insists she is just nursing him back to health and has no earthly idea what they are talking about. Our girl mentally sighs, noting that in her past corporate life, this would be an immediate citizen's arrest, but she decides to play by the novel's rules and let the blonde detective have her big protagonist moment. Elise steps up and confidently breaks down the entire crime from start to finish. Giselle stubbornly denies it, loudly arguing that Noah handed William the tea directly, leaving her with zero physical opportunity to tamper with the cup. Duke Claude completely loses his patience. He rests his hand on his sword hilt and bluntly asks our girl if he should just go ahead and slice the stubbornly ignorant villainess into bite-sized pieces. Our heroine quickly tells him to hold his horses, insisting they let Elise finish her brilliant deduction. The detective happily obliges, explaining that the poison was never actually in the teacup itself, but cleverly hidden in the communal sugar pot. She reveals that Giselle swapped in completely colorless, highly toxic sugar cubes. Knowing William had a massive sweet tooth and consistently added sugar to his tea, she simply waited for him to receive his cup and let him unknowingly poison himself. Then, amidst the chaotic screaming when he hit the pavement, she quietly fished the remaining toxic cubes out of the pot. Giselle stares in horror as the detective flawlessly unravels her plot. Our girl jumps back into the conversation, casually mentioning that they already know the exact poison used and have perfectly tracked down her shady underground supplier. Dropping the final hammer, she points out that Giselle completely changed her outfit immediately after the tea party. Our heroine gleefully deduces that the original dress is probably marinating in toxic sugar grains since she had to stash the evidence on her person. She mentally wonders if the villainess is finally ready to throw in the towel. Instead of surrendering, Giselle completely snaps. Noah steps forward, genuinely asking why on earth she would do something so horrible to her supposed friend. The villainess shrieks that a useless, decorative prince could never possibly comprehend the sheer agony of dying for unrequited love. Our girl's brain completely stalls on the word dying. Duke Claude helpfully translates the local crazy talk, explaining that a fanatical cult in the kingdom genuinely believes that if you murder the person you love, you permanently steal their soul and get to spend eternity together in hell. Our girl realizes this chick is attempting a highly romanticized, literal murder-suicide pact. Claude mentions the kingdom aggressively cracked down on this unhinged belief, but it clearly survived among the youth. Fired up, Elise steps forward, fiercely declaring she will never let Giselle hurt William ever again. However, the villainess slyly hides her dagger behind her back. Our girl mentally screams as the detective marches right into the danger zone. In a flash, Giselle grabs Elise and holds the blade directly to her throat, screaming at everyone to get out so she can die with William, or else the civil officer gets a permanent haircut. Our heroine mentally facepalms at this absolute train wreck of a situation. Duke Claude is entirely unfazed by the hostage crisis. He fully prepares to draw his sword, coldly informing Giselle that using a government employee as a meat shield does absolutely nothing to scare him. He promises that the millisecond she actually hurts Elise, her own life is instantly over. Giselle freezes in sheer terror as Claude strictly orders her not to move a single muscle. Our girl hits peak panic mode, realizing the ruthless Duke might actually slice straight through the heroine just to neutralize the threat. Knowing she needs to pull aggro immediately to save Elise, our girl flashes a wicked, mocking smile. She completely roasts the villainess, calling her a pathetic fool for thinking she could ever claim William's heart by stealing his life. She laughs right in Giselle's face, promising her that even in the deepest, darkest pits of hell, the only thing William will ever give her is pure, unfiltered hatred. The psychological damage is super effective. Giselle completely loses her grip on reality. violently shoves Elise out of the way, and lunges straight at our girl with the dagger raised. Before the blade can even get close, Noah launches himself right in front of his sister. He catches the deadly blade with his bare hands, the sharp metal slicing deep into his palms. Blood drips down his fingers, but our boy does not even flinch. Glaring down at the villainess, he coldly states that he does not care if she used his tea party for murder, but he promises to end her life right then and there for daring to threaten a single hair on his sister's head. Giselle yanks her dagger back, but the damage is already done. Noah intercepts the blade with his bare hands, the sharp metal slicing deep into his palms, but our boy does not even flinch. Our girl stares at him, completely shell-shocked. He feels entirely different from the timid kid she met earlier. Duke Claude swiftly steps in and physically subdues the screaming villainess, officially bringing the messy hostage crisis to an end. Completely ignoring the chaos and his own actively bleeding hands, Noah turns his full attention to his sister and softly asks if she is hurt. Our girl stammers that she is perfectly fine, loudly pointing out that he is the one leaking blood everywhere. Noah just smiles, genuinely relieved that she is safe. He reaches out and gently touches her cheek, accidentally smudging a little bit of blood on her face. Our girl freezes, severely questioning if anyone could genuinely go this far just out of pure sibling affection. Snapping out of her shock, our girl grabs a handkerchief and frantically starts cleaning his wounded hands. She yells at Elise to go fetch a doctor immediately, and the blonde detective sprints off to get help. Our heroine deeply thanks Noah for saving her life, but strictly scolds him for being so incredibly reckless. Internally, she notes that she thought she was just perfectly playing the role of a concerned sister, but this kid's intense devotion feels heavy and dangerously real. She firmly orders him to take better care of himself. Noah happily agrees, admitting that his hands hurt like crazy, but he is absolutely thrilled he could take her pain in her place. He flashes a sickeningly sweet smile. Our girl's soul practically leaves her body for a permanent vacation as a chilling realization hits her. She completely misjudged him. He is not just some weak little boy who needs protecting. This kid might actually be a monster. The scene shifts back to the sick room, where Elise is glued to Duke William's bedside. A quick flashback reveals the Chancellor handing Elise a specialized medicine, warning her that depending on William's exact condition, the antidote might not work perfectly. Back in the present, Elise firmly holds William's hand, desperately begging him to open his eyes. Like a scene straight out of a fairy tale, his eyelids finally flutter open. She gasps in shock, loudly calling his name. William looks up at her, his eyes welling up with tears, and softly confirms that it is really him. Blushing like a teenager, he drops the ultimate romantic line, telling the detective that because she stayed by his side the entire time, he could actually hear her sweet voice in his dreams. Standing off to the side, our girl quietly watches the main couple finally get their dramatic romantic reunion. A little while later, our girl and Noah are standing outside in the fresh air. Noah politely thanks his sister for everything she did today, but she quickly corrects him, pointing out that she is the one who owes him her life. Looking like a hopeful puppy, Noah begs her to please come visit him again. Our girl returns his smile and promises she will. But as she walks away, leaving a beaming Noah behind, her corporate brain starts overanalyzing the facts. Noah was the one who hosted the tea party. She seriously wonders if he actually noticed Giselle tampering with the sugar and deliberately overlooked the poison just to manufacture a crisis that would force Lavinia to visit him. Remembering his chilling confession that he did not mind Giselle using his tea party as long as his sister was unhurt, our girl realizes the murder case might be closed, but her personal stress levels have officially skyrocketed. Back in her office, our girl is going over the aftermath with her personal assistant. She mentally reviews Giselle's official confession. The villainess claimed she learned the sugar trick and secured the poison from a mysterious hooded man who completely hid his face. This exact same man is the one who warned Giselle that the Queen was launching an investigation. Our girl notes that the assassin who canonically murders Lavinia in the original novel is also famously described as wearing a hood, leaving her severely questioning if this is the exact same guy. Suddenly, her personal assistant interrupts the internal monologue with a massive confession of her own. She nervously admits that back during the National Treasure incident, when she was absolutely suffocating under a mountain of dumped paperwork, a hooded man randomly approached her and handed her a letter. The letter contained the exact patrol routes and shift times of the palace guards. The mystery man told her that how she used the information was entirely up to her. The assistant confesses she felt completely manipulated into a corner, but kept her mouth shut because she knew it would just sound like a pathetic excuse. Our girl's mind races. A hooded man secretly approaching government officials and nobles never happened in the original plot. She wonders if this is a brand new twisted storyline, a butterfly effect caused by her taking over Lavinia's body, or if this guy is definitely her fated murderer. Pushing the rising panic aside, she warmly thanks her assistant for finally coming clean. The assistant bows, profusely apologizing for hiding such critical information. Our girl brushes it off, but strictly orders her to keep this entire conversation a total secret. She insists there is zero need to stir up unnecessary panic, and explicitly forbids the assistant from breathing a word of this to Duke Pauldine or the Chancellor. The assistant immediately agrees. Our girl locks in, firmly repeating to herself that she absolutely must uncover the hooded man's true identity. The scene sharply cuts to Duke Claude, standing completely alone in front of a closed door and looking like a literal horror movie villain. The scene opens outside our girl's office, where Duke Claude recovers from a brief moment of shock before stepping inside to hand over some documents. As her secretary Colette leaves, our girl casually reminds her to focus on their previous discussion. The Duke instantly locks onto this, bluntly asking what they are plotting. Our girl completely freezes. Her corporate paranoia violently kicks in, deciding she needs to investigate the hooded murder suspect herself before expanding her trust circle. She reflexively brushes the Duke off, leaving him standing there looking clearly taken aback. Breaking the awkward tension, our girl announces her schedule for tomorrow, noting she is having tea at Noah's palace. Claude firmly double-checks the destination. She explains that since her brother physically intercepted a deadly blade for her, checking on his recovery is the absolute least she can do. Internally, she views the visit as the perfect excuse to hunt for case clues. Claude immediately shifts into bodyguard mode, firmly stating he will accompany her. Arriving at the palace, Noah is aggressively blushing and practically vibrating with joy that his sister actually showed up. Our girl smoothly reminds him she always keeps her promises. Mentally reviewing his tragic lore, she recalls the original queen permanently locked him inside this exact palace, sparking heavy rumors that he secretly despised and eventually murdered her. Refusing to let that doomed future play out, she decides aggressively building a wholesome sibling bond is her ultimate survival tactic. Noah happily hands her a freshly brewed cup of tea. She stares at the liquid, severely questioning her life choices as she wonders if it is poisoned, but powers through the anxiety to earn his trust. The tea turns out to be perfectly delicious. As they chat, it becomes terrifyingly clear that Noah is a low-key genius, effortlessly keeping up with complex topics ranging from government policies to random trivia. While she completely fails to extract any solid clues about the hooded man, she definitely gets a better read on her brother. When she asks why he insists on staying permanently cooped up, Noah drops his innocent act for a split second. He coldly explains that walking around freely would give her political enemies a massive opening, insisting that remaining a permanent prisoner is the absolute best way to prove she is the undisputed ruler. Stunned by his chilling logic, she pivots, suggesting there would be zero political backlash if he goes outside specifically with her. Noah looks utterly shocked before breaking into a massive smile, whispering that just sitting with her feels like an impossible dream. She verbally agrees to his heavy requests for their peaceful time to last forever, internally sweating at how horribly the original queen must have treated him. Spotting the Duke standing guard, Noah suddenly drops a highly awkward question, bluntly asking if she has romantic feelings for her fiercely loyal knight. Our girl's brain practically flatlines. Scrambling to brush it off, she admits the Duke is capable, but firmly states she has absolutely zero desire to make anyone her husband. Internally, she notes that marrying any consort candidate is basically inviting her future murderer into her bedroom. Noah practically glows with validation, fiercely insisting she is already perfect and does not need a consort, adding he never wants a queen either. She warmly calls him her one and only little brother, heavily banking on the fact that making him family guarantees her safety. A wave of heavy narration interrupts the wholesome moment, noting that our girl completely failed to understand the terrifying depths hidden behind Noah's sweet smile, or the intense emotions brewing inside the Duke, until it was far too late to stop the impending disaster. The scene sharply cuts back to our girl's office, where Colette drops a massive stack of paperwork on the desk. They both agree the hooded man investigation is an absolute nightmare and desperately need a sanity break. As Colette leaves to fetch tea and sweets, our girl stretches and pieces the puzzle together. The mystery man possesses terrifying knowledge of the palace, expertly fanning minor workplace drama and romantic quarrels into full-blown national disasters. Glancing down at a sketch Colette drew of the suspect, she feels a chilling sense of déjà vu, entirely convinced she has seen that exact face before. Her intense brainstorming is violently interrupted when the Duke suddenly strides into the office, demanding to know what she is looking at. Our girl completely panics and swiftly hides the sketch behind her back. The Duke effortlessly closes the distance, bluntly accusing her of investigating the hooded man and practically pleading to know why he is the only person locked out of her trust circle. Her paranoia instantly flares up, briefly wondering if the fiercely loyal knight could actually be the hooded man himself. Going on the offensive, she snaps back, accusing him of prying entirely too much into her royal business. Instead of backing down, the Duke closes the final gap, practically pinning her against the wall. Towering over her, he completely drops his stoic persona, intensely admitting he has forgotten his place because he desperately and selfishly wants her to rely on him. Claude is currently channeling his inner romance novel lead, admitting that he knows he is being presumptuous but desperately wants our heroine to rely on him. Our girl watches him, thinking he is the perfect mix of serious, honest, and painfully awkward since he blames himself even when she is the one hiding secrets. She reaches out to touch his face, offering a soft apology and promising to finally explain the situation properly. She pulls out the draft of the sketch, linking the hooded man to both the National Treasure Vault disaster and Lady Giselle's recent attempt to cancel Duke William's subscription to Life. She is entirely convinced there is a specific reason this guy keeps spawning trouble in the palace, especially since every single incident ends with Queen Lavinia's reputation being dragged through the mud. Claude analyzes the situation like a man whose muscles have muscles, noting that the vault case tarnished her dignity while the poisoning attempted to shatter her relationship with Noah. He senses a massive amount of malice from this hooded figure, like a dark will is specifically trying to drive Her Majesty down into a permanent career hiatus. Our girl is left speechless by his sharp deduction as she realizes she is essentially being toyed with like a bored cat with a laser pointer. Claude explains that while small sparks of trouble are common in a palace, the civil officers usually handle them before they become a disaster. However, this hooded man is carefully handpicking specific problems and fanning them into full-blown incidents designed to ruin her life. She admits she is incredibly glad she consulted him, because her own brain would have taken a century to notice the pattern. Claude actually cracks a rare smile, admitting he is happy she finally chose to confide in him. Seeing the stoic knight smile causes our heroine's heart to start doing unprompted gymnastics, leaving her face a very concerning shade of red. She desperately questions if she is having a medical emergency, since this heart-racing feeling is nothing like the tension she feels around murder suspects. Claude notices her face looks like a ripe tomato and asks if she is feeling unwell. She quickly looks away, claiming she just overthought things until the blood rushed to her head, mentally scolding herself for feeling light and fluffy in the middle of a life-or-death investigation. Shifting back to boss mode, she vows to uncover the mastermind behind these royal hit pieces. Claude solemnly vows to devote his entire existence to the task. Our girl offers a smile but internally feels a massive wave of guilt, realizing that since her reincarnation, Claude has been her personal security service and she has basically been using him whenever it is convenient. She apologizes for being a constant burden, but Claude suddenly grabs her hand. He confesses that his heart practically soars when she relies on him, and he finds himself wishing she would depend exclusively on him. The air in the room becomes thick enough to cut with a sword as our girl realizes this sounds suspiciously like a love confession. She stammers, telling him he has made his feelings perfectly clear, and politely asks him to let go of her hand. Instead of retreating, Claude stays parked in her personal space and gets even closer. Our girl's brain flashes back to Noah's awkward question about whether she likes the Duke, and she firmly tells herself that a romance with her knight can never happen because he might still be the one fated to end her subscription to Life. The romantic tension is violently interrupted by a commotion at the door, where Colette is standing and looking like she just walked into a scene she definitely wasn't supposed to see. The secretary awkwardly apologizes for the interruption, but our girl frantically insists they weren't doing anything at all. Colette looks completely unconvinced as she notes the tea has gone cold and offers to bring a fresh pot for the three of them. Once the secretary flees, our girl realizes she is currently too embarrassed to even look her knight in the face. Later on, as they walk through the corridor reviewing paperwork, the palace staff can't stop the aggressive whispering. They note that the queen has been acting surprisingly kind lately and seems to be getting along dangerously well with the duke. The gossip mill is already convinced he is the frontrunner for the royal consort position. The chancellor watches them from a distance, deciding not to bother greeting her while she is so busy. He bitterly thinks to himself that while he can't win her favor like the royal dog, he has his own ruthless way of doing things. Back in his office, he confirms with his subordinate that King Serial Zuma will be arriving in 1 week. He flashes a smile that looks like it was constructed purely from bad intentions, vowing that he will finally make Lavinia his. We move to the chancellor issuing a strict order to his subordinate. He demands that all arrangements to receive King Zuma be made flawlessly, and explicitly warns his lackey to make absolutely sure Lady Lavinia never catches wind of their plan. The subordinate bows and agrees, but internally he is heavily stressing over the sheer audacity of this political stunt. He knows the chancellor used secret letters to personally invite King Zuma, intending to make the visit look completely spontaneous. He realizes this heavy-handed move is basically a massive trap designed to perfectly corner the queen. Fast forward 1 week, and the scene shifts to a massive business meeting. Our girl sits at the head of a huge table, flashing a tight smile at 2 visiting diplomats. She slowly clarifies the situation. The lead diplomat cheerfully confirms this, explaining that Lord Cyril Zuma has suddenly taken a massive interest in the royal court and has firmly decided he absolutely must greet Lady Lavinia in person. Our girl mentally notes that this sudden royal craving is suspiciously abrupt, especially since it is currently tribute season for the tribal regions. The diplomat smoothly covers for the short notice, claiming King Zuma views this as the perfect opportunity to visit and specifically wishes to apologize for being entirely too busy uniting the tribes to greet Her Majesty sooner. He adds that the king will be arriving tomorrow morning. Our girl repeats the word tomorrow like it is a foreign language. She points out that they have prepared absolutely nothing for a state visit. The diplomat casually adds that as the leader of the tribes, his king wishes to speak directly with Her Majesty without any excessive ceremony or royal fuss. Internally, our girl knows they cannot just take that casual request at face value. A massive chunk of the capital's workforce is of tribal origin, and if she treats their king like a random walk-in, the political backlash will be utterly catastrophic. She mentally reviews King Cyril Zuma's lore. He is the 5th potential killer on her survival list, a highly dangerous, wildly ambitious man who canonically attempts a full-scale invasion of the capital immediately after Lavinia's future death. She calculates that this unannounced visit is highly likely a scouting trip specifically to plan her murder. While her survival instincts are screaming to lock the city gates, she physically cannot refuse him. Putting on her best royal mask, she smoothly declares that Lavinia de Meldis awaits King Zuma's visit from the very bottom of her heart. The diplomat actually looks a little startled by her flawless composure before clearing his throat, bowing, and making a swift exit. The second the door clicks shut, our girl's internal monologue completely snaps. She realizes she is hosting a massive diplomatic state visit with absolutely zero preparation, fully aware this is going to be a logistical nightmare. The entire meeting room erupts into a violent panic as the palace staff scrambles to get ready. Cutting through the chaos, our girl turns directly to Colette, ordering her to clear the Chancellor's schedule today, no matter how late into the night it gets. Colette awkwardly responds that the Chancellor's schedule is actually entirely free right now, noting the timing is almost a little too perfect. A sudden, chilling realization hits our girl. She marches directly into the Chancellor's office. He is sitting at his desk, wearing a completely unbothered smile, and smoothly thanks her for coming all this way. She bluntly informs him that King Zuma is arriving tomorrow. He casually replies that he already knows. Trying to salvage the disaster, she demands he work alongside her to prep for the royal arrival. The Chancellor just laughs, telling her there is absolutely no need for that because all the diplomatic arrangements are already flawlessly in place. He smugly orders her to just leave the diplomacy entirely to him. Hearing this, our girl's corporate trauma violently kicks in. A severe headache spikes behind her eyes as she suddenly flashes back to the exact moment in her past life when she was completely betrayed by her coworkers. Just as she is reeling from the revelation, Colette rushes into the office to check on her. Our girl glares at the Chancellor, bluntly asking if he orchestrated this entire crisis just to corner her. He completely ignores the accusation, simply ordering his subordinate to clear the room so he can speak with Lady Lavinia alone. Colette hesitates, but our girl firmly tells her it is fine, ordering the secretary to leave and to specifically make sure the Duke does not come anywhere near this office. As everyone clears out, our girl is left entirely alone with her political nightmare. She completely drops the royal pleasantries, bluntly calling him out for acting so friendly in public while ruthlessly setting traps to corner her behind the scenes, firmly declaring that his tactics are pretty nasty. The Chancellor doesn't even blink. He throws her words right back, stating that calling him nasty is very unlike her. Our girl scoffs, asking what he actually knows about her anyway. The Chancellor smoothly lays out his entire trap. He explains that if she completely fails the upcoming diplomatic talks, her position as queen is permanently compromised. But if she legally hands the reins over to him, it effectively announces to the entire kingdom that she is nothing but a decorative figurehead. She finishes his thought, noting that handing him a tribal king's diplomatic visit practically declares that he has already been chosen as the royal consort. Internally, our girl feels a deep wave of disappointment. She genuinely thought they had built a tiny amount of trust, believing that despite his brutal political math, he was honest when it came to favors and maybe would not eventually betray her. But the Chancellor steps right into her personal space, shattering her hopes as he coldly states that this is exactly how he does things. Adjusting his glasses, he demands that if he successfully handles King Zuma, she must officially choose him as her royal consort. He grabs her by the wrist, leaning in aggressively to demand she say the words out loud. Our girl fiercely tells him not to be ridiculous, pointing out that he only wants her so he can stand at the very top of the country. He actually grins, firing back that she is currently planning to use him and throw him away. He sharply reminds her that she still heavily owes him for helping with her brother's poisoning case. Dropping his polite mask entirely, he warns her that while the Duke, the Jester, or even her brother might gladly act as her loyal pawns, he is absolutely nothing like them. He flashes a purely devilish grin. Our girl is completely terrified, realizing this entire development is completely off the original script. Because she has been actively changing the timeline to dodge her fated death, the hearts and actions of her potential killers have violently shifted. Faced with a man who now aggressively desires the queen instead of just ignoring her, she feels completely overwhelmed. He leans in even closer, kissing her hand as he purrs that he does not have all the time in the world, heavily demanding she give him her answer right now. A sudden flashback violently pulls our girl back to her past life, specifically to the exact moment her corporate executive stabbed her in the back. She remembers demanding an explanation for their sudden betrayal. The lead executive merely smirked, noting that betrayal was a harsh word. He casually acknowledged her professional competence, but ruthlessly roasted her for being far too soft-hearted, claiming he could never entrust a vital company to someone with such a weak disposition. He then offered her a shiny vice president title, but strictly on the condition that she obediently follow his lead. Snapping back to the present, our girl stares down the chancellor. Having already earned a PhD in corporate betrayal, she completely refuses to become his political puppet. She firmly declares that she will not rely on him and will command the meeting with King Zuma entirely on her own. The chancellor genuinely questions if she is serious and asks how she plans to survive the ordeal without his help. She stubbornly insists she will manage somehow, fully prepared to bear the ultimate responsibility if she fails. Closing the distance between them, the chancellor asks if she truly hates him so much that she refuses to make him her consort. Flashing a polite smile, our girl clarifies that it is absolutely not about hate. She genuinely praises his incredible rise from a boy with zero backing to the highest political office, acknowledging that his massive efforts easily match his good fortune. Internally, she finally understands exactly why the original queen chose him to rule by her side. However, she verbally draws a hard line, stating she absolutely cannot accept his toxic method of preying on people's weaknesses to force them into submission. The chancellor asks why she is looking at him with such sad eyes. Our girl casually fires back that she is simply mirroring the sad eyes he has carried since childhood. She warns him that constantly resorting to such heavy-handed tactics will eventually trigger his own absolute ruin. He clenches his fist, fiercely arguing that weaponizing every single card in his hand to bend others to his will is the only way he knows how to survive, and it is the exact strategy that flawlessly secured his climb to the top. Gently touching her hair, he murmurs that if she chose him, he would give her absolutely everything she desires. Our girl swiftly dodges the physical affection, sharply pointing out that his definition of giving means turning her into a possession, and she firmly belongs to no one. Lowering his hand, the chancellor drops his romantic facade. Our girl apologizes for taking up his time and promises to handle the tribal king without causing him any collateral damage. But the chancellor drops a serious warning, describing King Zuma as a brutally shrewd predator constantly waiting for the perfect opening to rip out the throats of his rivals. Our girl notes this means she cannot afford to show a single moment of weakness. Pausing for a second, she genuinely asks if the chancellor is actually worried about her, considering he is the one who built this entire trap in the first place. He ignores the question, bluntly asking if she honestly believes she stands a chance. She admits she is not entirely sure, but smoothly adds that she highly doubts the tribal king could possibly be as troublesome as His Excellency, the Prime Minister. The chancellor is visibly taken aback by the sudden compliment, aggressively blushing before quickly recovering his composure to propose a high-stakes bet. He lays out the terms. If she successfully handles the meeting with King Zuma, the chancellor will obey any command she gives and officially wipe his favor debt from her brother's poisoning case clean. Our girl cautiously asks if his winning condition is securing the consort title. He shakes his head, offering a much more scandalous alternative. If she finds herself on the verge of total diplomatic failure, he will step in, save the day, and prove his worth to the tribal king. In exchange for this rescue, she must agree to spend one night with him. Our girl's brain practically short-circuits. She severely questions if he honestly believes a single night together will magically change her heart. Flashing a highly confident smile, he notes he will never know unless he tries. She internally groans at his aggressive pushiness, but her corporate logic quickly takes over. If she treats this scandalous wager as a chance to advance her murder investigation, it is actually a highly profitable gamble. She officially accepts the bet, completely confident in her ability to succeed. The chancellor slides his glasses back into place, smugly declaring he looks forward to watching her struggle and casually reminding her to beg for his help whenever she needs it. As our girl leaves the office, a heavy wave of paranoia hits her. She calculates that if the chancellor's obsession with authority is his actual murder trigger, her blatant refusal to act as his puppet might severely shorten her life expectancy. She desperately hopes this upcoming diplomatic meeting will somehow change his heart. Outside in the hallway, Colette is anxiously waiting, admitting she was mere seconds away from barging in. When her secretary asks how the negotiation went, our girl sighs, admitting it was a total disaster, and immediately heads for her room to regroup. Arriving in her bedroom, she finds the blonde psycho casually waiting for her. He flashes a cheerful smile and asks how she is doing. She dryly reminds him that she definitely never invited him inside. He completely agrees, but smugly points out that she desperately needs his services right now to gather intel on Cyril Zuma. Our girl internally wonders how he manages to intercept highly classified political gossip so fast, but she appreciates his efficiency and gets straight to business. The jester flawlessly breaks down the tribal king's lore. He explains that the tribes consist of 34 distinct clans in the western deserts, basically acting as small independent nations. They tame wild animals, excel in physical combat and curses, and possess a terrifying mastery over nature. Historically, they were constantly losing border wars against the kingdom, and everyone assumed their total surrender was inevitable. That was until Cyril stepped up. He violently united the desperate clans, fought the kingdom's military to a complete standstill, and became an unparalleled hero. Then, in a massive plot twist, Cyril suddenly surrendered. The jester notes the tribal king simply realized it was way more efficient to absorb the kingdom's knowledge from the inside and eventually steal their power, rather than fighting a losing war outright. Thanks to Cyril's tactical surrender, the tribes integrated and became a highly distinguished faction within the capital. Wrapping up the profile, the jester adds that Cyril loves a good fight, enjoys heavy drinking, and is fiercely passionate about women, flawlessly embodying the classic hero archetype. Our girl processes this terrifyingly detailed intelligence report, noting he even brought a letter written in the native tribal script. She asks exactly how long he has been investigating this specific threat. The jester smiles, claiming a good intelligence agent never skimps on preparations, just in case a royal crisis randomly occurs. Our girl firmly declares that failure is not an option and promises to put his intel to excellent use. Taking that as an invitation for chaos, the jester steps dangerously close. Flashing a purely unhinged grin, he softly asks if the tribal king is simply a nuisance, casually offering to permanently delete the man from existence to save her the diplomatic headache. The blonde psycho casually suggests assassination as a highly viable problem-solving technique. Colette gasps from the background, utterly horrified, firmly insisting Her Majesty would never order such a brutal thing. Radiating pure, unadulterated creepiness, the jester simply notes he wasn't actually asking for the secretary's opinion. Taking charge, our girl pulls the jester close and strictly orders him not to bully her staff. She emphasizes that she absolutely refuses to eliminate her obstacles by throwing people into shallow graves. Internally, however, she calculates the dark math. She admits that systematically executing every single walking red flag in her life, from the tribal king to her own brother, would certainly make her daily routine infinitely safer. But she quickly hits the brakes, realizing that launching a royal bloodbath would make her exactly like the doomed, original Queen Lavinia. The jester goes quiet for a split second before noting that she has definitely become kinder, adding that watching her new pacifist route is highly entertaining. He casually points out the endless parade of nobodies who constantly dump their workloads onto her, violently complain, and launch selfish schemes. He wonders out loud if she hates them, smoothly suggesting that permanently shutting them up would severely lighten her emotional load. To visually emphasize his highly toxic therapy advice, he casually rips the heads off a few little paper dolls. Colette watches this display of violent arts and crafts in absolute shock. Unfazed, our girl snatches one of the decapitated paper heads from his hand, flatly roasting him for his incredibly horrible taste. Dropping the playful act, the jester seriously warns her that unless she is willing to cross that brutal line, she is doomed to stay in pain forever. Our girl sighs heavily, suddenly having a massive epiphany about her chaotic intelligence agent. She realizes that the original Jack watched Lavinia slowly suffocate under the condemnation and suffering until her mind completely snapped. His entire portfolio of bizarre, unhinged behavior is just his severely twisted way of showing absolute loyalty. Deciding to lay down the law, she firmly states that while she definitely gets angry at people who disrespect her, she refuses to stoop to their level. She fiercely vows to force them to acknowledge her fair and square, internally solidifying her absolute refusal to become a murderous tyrant. The jester actually looks genuinely shocked by her pure boss energy. Without a single ounce of hesitation, he closes the distance and wraps our girl in a massive, overwhelming hug. Colette immediately starts screaming in the background, demanding to know what on earth he is doing to Her Majesty. Completely ignoring the panicked secretary, the jester flashes a radiant smile, praising his queen for being ridiculously cool and begging her to stay exactly like this. With that dramatic exit line, he completely vanishes into thin air, leaving only a mysterious letter fluttering behind. Our girl catches the paper, staring at the empty space and mentally complaining that she will literally never be able to read that man's mind. Meanwhile, the jester is casually strolling down a dimly lit corridor all by himself. He lets out a highly entertained laugh, genuinely pondering what chaotic masterpiece he should orchestrate next just to make his beloved queen happy. The scene shifts to a massive late-night strategy meeting. The room is completely packed with nobles and exhausted palace staff aggressively pushing paperwork. Colette hands over another huge stack of documents. Our girl glances at the late hour, heavily stressing over whether they can actually pull off this diplomatic miracle in time. Right on cue, Claude marches into the room leading an entire squad of fresh employees. He announces that he systematically gathered all the palace staff who are completely free from the Chancellor's toxic political influence, noting they all have strong ties to his own house Spalding. The new recruits eagerly bow, begging to offer their services to Her Majesty. Claude formally steps up, deeply promising to assist her with absolutely everything he has. Our girl's stress instantly melts away into a state of pure joy where her eyeballs are practically sweating with relief, and she sincerely thanks him. A little while later, our girl is blazing through documents when her pen slips and hits the floor. As she ducks down to grab it, Claude simultaneously reaches for it as well. They end up practically face to face near the floorboards. Staring at his ridiculously handsome face, our girl's brain immediately flashes back to his intense, borderline romantic confession in the office. She internally panics, realizing her heart starts doing unprompted gymnastics every single time she looks at him now. Claude smoothly hands over the pen with a ridiculously charming smile. Our girl gets entirely too flustered, awkwardly stammering out a thank you before mentally slapping herself. She strictly orders her brain to stop malfunctioning over her lethal night and heavily focus on the impending diplomatic disaster sitting right in front of her. The sun rises on the morning of the ultimate test. King Cyril Zuma officially arrives at the palace gates. Claude stands tall, flawlessly executing his duties as the royal welcoming committee. Zuma smoothly thanks him for the reception, officially introducing himself. Claude returns the greeting, politely stating they have been expecting the tribal monarch. Completely uninterested in dragging out the small talk, Zuma instantly cuts to the chase, demanding to be taken directly to Her Majesty the Queen without a single second of delay. And that's the end for today's recap. If you had fun, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support keeps the recaps coming. Choose your next binge. At the top is a crowd pleaser, and the bottom is the latest chaos drop. Thanks for watching. Stay comfy, keep your popcorn ready, and I'll see you in the next one.